Well, hello and welcome to our game this morning. Myself, Shane Stapleton, joined as ever by Michael Verney here. We're brought to you by OurGame. If you want to get this great Galway jersey, maybe that Cork one there, any of the ones on screen, there's a huge range of them at OurGame. Use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off. Michael, we can't but talk about the huge story of the weekend, which is Cork have gotten a result against Waterford, but more importantly, Tip are back in the hunt.
I was going to say the Rebels are back, but fairness to you, we're not even a minute into show and you've wangled a Tip reference in and how Tipperary are somehow still going to win the All-Ireland. So kudos to you. Jeez, we're up and at it early. I only got back from Ennis at 12 o'clock last night. And I was afraid I was going to sleep it out, so I just decided to stay up all night just to make sure that it was ready for today's show. That's not true, obviously. But up and at it early, there's so much to talk about. Like, it couldn't have worked out better, Shane, in Leinster and Munster. Like, we're just coming down, like it's going to be a belter of a Saturday evening, 3 huge games with all sorts of different ramifications. And then in Munster on the Sunday, 2 huge games where, like, isn't it great that there's a chance that Tip could still qualify? I think Tip have to win by 7 and beat Cork by 7, and Waterford have to lose to Clare by 7, and then Tip will be in, I believe, an advantageous scoring difference position. Like it's unlikely, but you just never know, and that's it couldn't have worked out any better. We're going down to the final day. We're going to be jumping forward and back between the 2 games. Funny, actually, I meant to send it on to you, actually, but before the Limerick and Clare teams came out yesterday, there was a huddle of about 30 players in front of the tunnel where there was a TV screen looking at the Waterford Cork game, and it was just like the minute that ended, I don't know if it was coincidence, but literally the second it ended, Limerick and Clare were out in the pitch for their game. So they definitely, John Kiely said he didn't know and didn't want to know the result, but so many other people around and involved in the squads. I saw Peter Casey, a load of the extended Limerick squad, looking at the game. So that's what it's going to be like next weekend as well, except it's going to be even better. You're going to be getting reports from Nolan Park. You're going to be getting reports from Salt Hill. Like, it's just built up for a perfect weekend.
Yeah, sure. You couldn't beat it that time in 2019 when it came down to the last games in Leinster. I was in Parnell Park that day, as I've said many times, actually, we've talked about it since. And then you had the game going on down in Wexford Park. It was brilliant stuff. You're hoping for that. The only thing is, right, so obviously Clare don't need a result. Limerick have all their games played. Obviously, they don't need a result. They won't be able to compete for one. But Clare are already through. So, I mean, it's not their fault. They got the job done and they got it done early. Fair play to them. If they rest their entire team, more power to them. They're fully entitled to. It's just a shame the way it's panned out now, because, for us to fully, have the entire experience where it feels like everyone's competing, depending on the team they name, it might kind of feel like, okay, Tipsy, the team named, and they sink into their boots a little bit. No, they shouldn't. They should go out and try and win anyway, because obviously they've lost 3 from 3. But it does take just a tiny bit away from it, the sense that Clare might just rest half their team.
Yeah, potentially. So saying that, Limerick were through going to Ennis yesterday, and I think like Kiely said, Aaron Gillan had a minor strain. I'm sure if they were playing All Ireland final yesterday, he would have been playing. And Darragh O'Donovan similarly had some sort of a knock, was still able to come on. Was out with their physio on the pitch after and looked in a bit of distress as well. So I think just it's probably a small knock there, but they'll be delighted. Just asked John Kiely yesterday, like, you must be delighted to be able to sit back next week with the feet up, and he just says, Asher, listen, best of luck to them all. Like, they're just sitting back. He's sitting back, loving it all. 3 weeks potentially maybe to get. I don't know if Keane Lynch is going to be back, but they'll probably rest for a week, crank it for a week, and then taper down for the week of the Munster final. Limerick didn't take the foot off yesterday. Nothing would suggest in their performance that they took the foot off. I don't know if it's in loan to change too much, or they're kind of they're kind of riding a wave at the moment. And they might, like I'd say David Reedy will start because they'll want to get more game time into him. Say Shane Meehan could start as well. Maybe Mark Rogers has a potential maybe to come into the match day squad. But I don't expect too many changes. I don't think there'll be too many changes.
Yeah, but at the same time, Tipperary in 2019 got a couple of heavy injuries in that round-robin win over Limerick. They didn't need a result. Cathal Barrett ended up getting injured. Bonner Maher did his cruciate, and they paid for it a few weeks later. I mean, Limerick were always going to win that Munster final, because of how it went. But they did pay for it. So there's an element that this game will not matter. You know the way people kept saying, Waterford, they could meet Limerick 3 times this year, losing that game. That didn't matter. But, so it can work both ways. You're kind of on a knife edge there. You want to keep your team fresh. You want to keep them match sharp and all that. But at the same time, you don't want to risk injuries. So it's the sort of perennial issue.
I think it's an interesting one, Shane, the fact that it's in Ennis as well. There's a bit, like Brian Lohan talked about, a bit of pressure that comes with that. Just the fact that he said, a swell for tickets and, there hasn't been as many people able to go to a game probably in a good while. I think they'll probably still feel that bit of expectation or pressure to still deliver a performance in Cusack Park. If I was to hazard a guess, I'd say 12 of the 15 that started yesterday will probably play. 11 to 12, I'd say. Funny as well, about Gillane, like that's the first time I'd say Kiely has rested. I know he said he had a knock, but it's the first time he hasn't played when he's been potentially available in an awful long time because he always plays him. The way the game worked out with Hegarty being sent off and how feisty it was, it mightn't have been a bad thing that he was kind of on the sideline as well. Maybe the way he sails a bit close to the wind at times. But from Kiely's point of view, like Keane Lynch out, Gearóid Hegarty sent off in the 64th minute. The best inside forward in the game, Gillane missing. Controversy during the week with, a player dropped from the squad and releasing a statement, and they still find a way to get a result. And just on that, Shane, like, can you recall in hurling championship history a wing back ever scoring 9 points, albeit 7 or 8 from place balls? Because I cannot remember that in hurling before. And Burns went up the pitch even to hit ones that were 50 yards out that he wouldn't normally. But like I was just saying to you off air, he hit 10 shots on goal, 9 went over, 1 just dropped short, and Graham Mulcahy got done for a square ball. Tony Kelly hit 12 points in the first half, and they were, they all went over the bar, which is just like ridiculous quality of shooting.
Yeah, it was silly stuff. Sure, like Offaly put up a huge score of. Let me just double check what the scoreline was. I watched the entire game. They put up 423 against Kerry. Had just 6 wides. Now there was a couple of shots that dropped short and stuff like that, but still had a scoring return of 73%, which is really, really high. And I think in that same game, Kerry's was something like 67%, which was no bad result either. Teams would generally, when they have all their marginal gains and all this in terms of like where you shoot from and all of that stuff, they'd be probably looking for a 70% return. So that's fair shooting from those teams there. I'm going to go through a couple of comments then, and we'll ask you what was your moment of the weekend, and I might bring up some of those from Twitter as well. But Grodo Go Grakon says, I know this weekend proves that form can change in the weekend, but where are Clare on the power rankings now? We'll definitely have to do one of those pretty soon. Hope Lohan treats the Waterford match as a glorified challenge game and gets game time into younger players returning from injury. Tony Kelly, Rory Hayes, Davy Fitz, rest them, start Adam Hogan, Aaron Fitz, Shanaher, Meehan, Conor Hegarty, Jack Brown and Jason McCarthy. If Rodgers and Aidan McCarthy aren't available.
Just on that, Shane, if Tony Kelly doesn't start, like, I know this is difficult. Brian Lohan can do what he wants, but if he doesn't start, it's probably, I think a lot of other teams will view that as a white flag being waved almost. So it's going to be fascinating. And I can guarantee you something though, that if Tony Kelly's not starting, he'll be still named in the 15 because there'll be uproar on the Friday night if he's not named. If he's not going to play, I guarantee you he'll still be named to play.
Yeah, true enough. David F. starts off the conversation now on the red cards. So he says, I think the off-the-ball stuff needs to be clamped down on now, lads. Nothing to stop sledging and targeting the best players by all means. Target them physically, but off-the-ball has to stop. We all need to be respectful of referees, but when they're as bad as Colm Lyons was yesterday, they need to be called out beyond bad. No, I think, look, Colm Lyons is as good a referee as is going at the moment. Fergal Horgan, I think, would be the gold standard at the moment. Lets the thing flow. They are killing matches and whatever. And like people, like if you say, oh, geez, I like the way the referee is letting this flow, as I did about Chris Mooney with the under-20s last week, the amount of people who come in slating then because obviously their team didn't get a call or whatever, and it led to a score. But like referee in hurling, and same with Gaelic football, it's unmanageable because you have 30 lads who are pushing their luck constantly. You can't see everything. It's very hard to decide a guy's intention. So obviously, Hegarty's hurley came across Aaron Fitzgerald, but at the same time, it's never a yellow card in my opinion. I think, and then people freak out when you say, well, look, Limerick have it coming to some degree. I'm not saying Groat Hegarty had it coming, but how often that they push their luck, sometimes it's going to go against you. They've gotten away with it crucially against Tipperary 2 years in a row, and they still haven't had a red card in the most decisive moments yet. And it is going to happen eventually. You can't keep pushing your luck forever and it not happen. So this time it happened in a match that didn't really matter to them because obviously they were going to get through anyway. But where do you stand with the red cards? Actually, you know what? Before you even get to that, can you also fill us in on what was the atmosphere like in Cusack Park? Because it seemed brilliant watching on TV.
Yeah, it was class, yeah. And there was a boombox going about an hour before throwing, and it had everyone kind of riled up. And, you know, it doesn't take much to rile up Limerick or Clare fans when they're meeting each other, particularly in Ennis. And Ennis is very closed in. You're in it. You feel like you're in on top of the pitch. Like it was well jammed. It was wedged by, I'd say nearly everybody was in by 3:30. From what I could see anyway, serious atmosphere. And even you just knew in the first 5 or 10 minutes they were getting in each other's faces, and it was hot and heavy. And in fairness to Colm Lyons, you're kind of treading a thin line. He probably could have thrown out a few yellow cards at the start of the game. There's probably 3 or 4 that could have went out in the first 20 or 25 minutes. Don't think the first yellow card was until Gearóid Hegarty's one in just coming into first half injury time. So he tried to let it flow from that respect and not be dishing out a load of them, because potentially there could have been 3 or 4 off if he threw out yellow cards early. So you are treading a thin line. On Gearóid Hegarty's, it was a bit of an optical illusion when you were looking at it from the back. It does look like he swings, and then you see it from the front, and like it's not even a swing. He barely makes contact with Aaron Fitzgerald's hurl. The fact that, you know, Colm Lyons saw it or didn't see it, his linesman and his 2 umpires, and that 4 sets of eyes were looking at it, and that's the decision they came to, is probably surprising. Listen, he doesn't have the access to. Once I saw, you know, a repeat of it straight away, you're saying, sure, listen, it's not even a free, let alone a yellow card. And listen, Aaron Fitzgerald probably did go down pretty handy. I know I saw some commentary online saying that he kind of went down from feeling the effects of an earlier blow, which is possible too. But not in a month of Sundays was that a yellow card. No way. Sometimes I suppose maybe your reputation precedes you in that respect. Will I go into John Kiely's comments quickly after?
Yeah, actually, just while you're looking for those, A Sully 180, this is a good comment. The discussion went on for far too long. Obviously, this is between the officials, which would lead you to believe that they weren't sure what happened. If you aren't sure, you can't produce a yellow. And I think ultimately, he probably knew that Gearóid Hegarty was on a yellow. Maybe that was part of the thing. He was like, I mean, would referees and officials be talking to each other saying, look, you can imagine the fallout now if I give him a red card and I'm wrong, and the analysis of this and whatever, and they're kind of weighing it up. Should we, shouldn't we? Well, we can't be too worried about the coverage. If that's how we saw it, that's what we have to give. So you wouldn't know what they'd be talking about that takes the extra minute.
It's funny you say that, because we actually had that chat in the press box as he was going around. It's just like, I don't know if this happened, but in your subconscious, you're kind of thinking, you know, do I want to be the focus of a 10-minute conversation on the Sunday game tonight? And the thing is about handing out a card, you have to be sure. You have to have seen it. If you didn't see it, like I've heard referees saying to players before, like, and it's happened to me maybe even at times, you could have pulled a stroke, or someone could have pulled a stroke on you. And if the referee says they didn't see it and the officials didn't see it, they didn't see it. There's nothing you can do really. And I don't know how. I'm not sure how they fell on this kind of resolution or whatever, thinking it was a yellow card. Because if they didn't see it, and as Andrew says there, you can deliberate for as long as you want, but if you didn't see it and it's not clear cut, it's not a yellow card.
Yeah, YouTube user, this is actually got a private message from last night. I'm not sure if he wants to keep his name anonymous or not, so I won't mention it. Do people notice more nastiness in the crowd than pre-COVID? Travelling to games for 30 years and have never witnessed worse. really awful stuff, my home support included. So often people with kids. So did you notice a nastiness? And I wonder, is this more like the vibe at games? Right? Like, I don't think there's people knocking the heads off each other in the crowd, but is there a bit more of a sourness in the atmosphere? I have to say, I didn't get that in Dublin, Kilkenny and Parnell on Saturday night. Now, you know, as ever, you'd have supporters or, what are you talking about? That was never a free, you know, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say anything overly nasty.
No, I'd say like I'm the same as you, Shane. I haven't sat in the middle of a crowd or stood in a terrace. It's maybe a bit different when you're there. We're probably a bit sheltered in the press box somewhat, and you don't really hear any of that stuff. That's, you know, that's a sideline incident, and it's the people close to it maybe shouting X, Y, or Z. I have to say I haven't noticed anything like that. Being honest with you, but people that were in the crowd are probably better versed maybe to judge that. Just going to read out John Kiely's unfiltered comments on the Gearóid Hegarty red card. So I'll just read it all out just to give a context. So we just asked him about it, and he said, listen, we've watched it back there on the tape, and it's quite clear that there was no contact. The player basically just grabbed his stomach and jumped straight down on the ground, but there was no contact. It's very disappointing. It was much ado about nothing. At the end of the day, it's a card we'll expect to be rescinded completely. He said, there's a narrative there at the moment that Gearóid is playing on the edge or doing X, Y, or Z, and it's feeding into people's decision-making right now. It needs to stop because it's going to have a big impact, and it's just really disappointing to see a player do that. He's referring to Aaron Fitzgerald there. It was a great game. There was a lot of physicality and it was a tremendous contest, but it was really disappointing that there was nothing there. He's talking about the incident. We've seen the footage. It's there for everybody to see, and at the end of the day, it shouldn't take from the overall game, which was a cracking game of hurling. Just to go into a small bit more, we just asked him, was there a danger that there was a narrative around Hegarty and whether that was seeping into officials, and he just said, we'll be guarding against that, I can assure you. Gearóid is a very honest player, just like all the rest of the players, and they work extremely hard. They are very focused on getting their tackling in and trying to get the ball. Gearóid is a very experienced player at this stage, and he's well able to cope with that attention and that expectation that might be out there. And then just on the appeal, he said, it's only right and fair for Gearóid because it is clear from the footage that there isn't a yellow card there, and it is an error. So we'll be asking for that error to be rectified, because those double yellows do carry forward some significance. So it is important that the decisions are rectified if there is a mistake made. And I think it is clear in this instance that there was a mistake made. Just on that, right? I think John Kiely is quite smart in a way. So what have people been talking about with Limerick all week? They've been talking about off the field antics. And in fairness to him, he comes armed, having watched the footage. He doesn't give an Arsene Wenger, I didn't see it. And all of a sudden, and he talks about a narrative there about Gearóid Hegarty. So he has changed the narrative himself. So they've put the narrative is now on referees been too hard, and maybe pundits and media, the narrative that they're saying about Gearóid Hegarty playing on the edge, that's what we're talking about now. Listen, it wasn't a yellow card. Mistakes are made in every game. It didn't cost Limerick. It could have, but it didn't cost them. But he's probably shifted the focus a bit there himself, I think, which is probably quite smart. But
yeah, a lot of crocodile tears there, though, because, you know, they push their luck so often, it's going to go against you the odd time. Like, do you remember, was it last year that he was talking about Galway looking for frees and talked about simulation, then ended up apologising for it later on? So there's a heat of the moment element of just after the game too. You mentioned the narrative last week. We have the Patreon show every Thursday with Kieran Kerry and Richie Power, and Kieran Kerry was talking about the incident last week. So here's a little clip of in terms of all of the drama with Limerick and that incident that everyone knows about.
Yeah, I suppose I felt sorry for the player and the individual himself, you know. I suppose on the field, you know, there's an awful lot of people talking about, you know, making the right call, making the right decision, making the right pass. And sometimes off the field, you have to do the same thing, you know, and there's only a week between the two games. And I suppose he's after making a little mistake, you know, and as I said a while ago, it's an amateur sport, and, you know, it's, you know, this particular player, you know, he's somebody's son, he could be somebody's partner, and, you know, he's to deal with this now in his own little way as well now, in his own mental health, and whatever disciplinary action is going to come from that. So, you know, I hope the plan's okay for him. Feel sorry for him, and, you know, just in the wrong place at the wrong time, basically, especially when there's only a week of a gap of a match. And if it was this Sunday night, you probably have 3 weeks of a gap for a month of final. And, you know, they could have went someplace nice and quiet, don't have a chat between themselves. But, you know, bang smack in the middle of the championship, you know, he obviously knows this himself. He's after his judgment, you know. probably made the wrong call, So my heart was out for him, being honest.
Do you, Kieran, do you see just with John Kiely, and like there was maybe some outside noise coming in before the Tipperary game? This is probably something that no manager wants to deal with. It's something that they've tried to nip in the bud now. Do you see it becoming a bigger problem or an issue that might, reflect in their on-field performances or anything like that over the coming months?
No, I wouldn't think so. I think they're a lot more mature and professional to that. Actually, if anything, it'll actually galvanise the spirit and the atmosphere between the squad. Actually, I would feel that would probably, from the outside looking in, it might look as a very negative thing. But I'd imagine in that army of the Limerick squad and the management team, if anything, it'll probably make them that bit tighter, and it'll probably crank it up another few notches.
See the full video. Yeah, brilliant stuff with Kieran and Richie every Thursday. So go to patreon.com/OurGame and you won't miss out on any of that goodness. So just to extend the conversation about red cards being given out too easily, the Austin Gleeson one. So he obviously got 2 yellow cards, and I did feel it was a bit much, and I heard a lot of people saying that a lot of the off the ball stuff going on, that he was being tested by the Cork defenders. We'll talk about the game more broadly in a while, but he's had a lot of red cards at this stage. I mean, just off the top of my head, you have the Cork one, obviously. You have the one against Wexford in the league semi-final. You have one for Rowan Moore there a couple of years ago. Tipperary also in the league. 2016 for WIT against LIT. There's a bit of a Sergio Ramos vibe almost going here in terms of the red cards. But, he's had 2 now in 4 games. Grode Hegarty's had 2 in 6 games. But did you come away from the game thinking, these red cards are coming out too handy, that in the heel of the hunt, did Austin Gleeson do enough to be red carded? By the way, he was brilliant up until the point that he got sent off.
Yeah, listen, I just think it's I was kind of in a similar instance to Gleeson was in before, in the 2006 under-21 final. There was a bit of a narrative going around. This is actually true, a narrative going around the county that was, there was a lot of off the ball stuff, and the referees should be nearly keeping an eye on it. So the under-21 final came around, picked up an early yellow. Don't remember what it was for now, to be fair. But a fella came in on me then. We were playing Ennis in the final, and literally just jumped on me and rolling around on the ground. I had my hands out like that. Bang. Second yellow, gone. What's that? How many years ago is that? 16. And you still remember it now. We're standing on the sideline for the last 20 minutes of an under-21 county final win, and it was just a nightmare. And I think Gleeson, his second yellow was something similar to that. It was nearly what if you were coaching a team and someone was on a yellow. Some coaches would say that, just grab him, roll him to the ground. Like that's, I don't think that's right at all.
Well, initially though, with the ball that broke, he was falling back on the ground himself, but he did pull the player down with him initially, and then this was my view of it, and then it kind of kicked off all the messing and rolling around from there. Again, like, is it worth a yellow card? Well, I suppose you instigated. I mean, the footage I looked at, because he pulled the player down from the break at a high ball, I thought, well, you instigated it to some degree. But I still don't like seeing red cards for what, it feels like. But again, I feel sorry for the referees, because hurling is an unmanageable game, just like Gaelic football.
Yeah, it's kind of the default when 2 lads are on the ground like that. It doesn't immediately come to your head. All right, lads, 2 yellows, and that's it. He was on a yellow card at that stage. So he had to walk. He was absolutely disgusted, I'd say. And any chance Waterford had of turning that game around went, I think, when he went off, because he was the one that was really leading the line. Hegarty was similarly disgusted coming off yesterday, and you could see him. You actually see him. I know you had it in the thumbnail image there, him pointing at the referee, which is probably not a great look now either, to be honest with you. It's because it does look kind of threatening or whatever. But yeah, if you're going to see a red card in hurling, you want to think that it's totally warranted. And listen, I don't think either of those, in my opinion, were warranted yesterday. But when you tread that line and get a yellow card, you're leaving yourself open to it. And just Eddie said it in the Indo this morning, Eddie Brennan, and I do think this is fairly on the ball too. He said, there's an issue we can't ignore. Limerick play brilliant hurling. I admire it, but there are a lot of hurls whipping across, lads, swiping hard. And if one of those is mistimed early in a match, it could cost them. I love everything about how Grode Hegarty hurls, but he's daring officials to card them or card him by saying he's not going to back down. He's very loose with his hurl, and he got pinged yesterday. Now, that's not to say that he deserved a red card. I don't see how officials were 100% on what they saw for the second yellow. The linesman clearly wasn't sure, while the umpires didn't seem to have a clue. You are giving them the chance to make a decision when you put yourself in that position.
Yeah. Okay, let's go through some of the positives and negatives of the game. Like Clare, as you said, Tony Kiely, 16 points, 5 of those from play. The first 3 off his right-hand side, lovely stuff. Then, scoring them from the sideline. Winning frees, David Fitzgerald, Dermot Ryan and Ryan Taylor, they all got 2 each. David McInerney and Shane Meehan also got brackets after their name. For Limerick, amazing that a wing-back top scores at 9 points, albeit 1 from play, but, just brilliant scores. Hegarty and David Reedy with 4 points each. Reedy's out from frees. Kyle Hayes got a goal. Seamus Flanagan, Tom Morrissey, Oisin O'Reilly and Darragh O'Donovan with a point each. So teams were level on 7 different occasions. I have to say, I loved watching Limerick hunting in packs. I just think it's brilliant to watch. I thought the game looked like, I didn't get to watch the game live, but even just watching the replay was thrilling. This was 2 teams hammering into each other. Huge pitch in Cusack Park, but it felt claustrophobic at times. When I saw players coming out with the ball on both sides, and you just realise, oh my God, this lad is surrounded and he has to try and get through so much traffic here and get hit from all sides. I just thought it was brilliant to watch, just for the physical contest between the 2 teams. And I didn't think at the start of the year that Clare would be, at this level. But by God, they are. I mean, it's hard not to be a believer. They're probably number 2 in the pecking order, based on how Waterford have been performing this year, how Tip have gone. Obviously, Kilkenny we'll talk about them a little later on. Actually, I threw up on the Patreon last night. How much would it benefit Kilkenny if they were going through a Munster championship? Because it would allow them to really, really test every one of their players. Now, we expect that they'll come through Leinster. But if they had the slightly higher competition of Munster, would that actually bring them on a bit more? But we'll come back to that later on. Something I want to ask you about Limerick, though. Has moving Kyle Hayes to the forwards worked? Now, he got his goal, obviously, in this game, but I don't think he set the game alight. He's been a man of the match in an All-Ireland final at centre forward. We know he can play in the forwards. But I wonder, number one, are they losing something from the half-back line? Dan Morrissey's a great player, can play full-back. Obviously, Mike Casey's very good at full-back also. But are they losing something by not having Kyle Hayes wing-back? And he's also not looking overly comfortable in the full forward line, or the forward line. Now, we know why it's happening, and it'll possibly be just a temporary thing. But do you see that that's interrupting, moving him out of there? Are they robbing Peter to pay Paul in a couple of places?
Yeah, a small bit. Like, with due respect to Dan Morrissey, he's just not going to offer the same attacking threat from wing back that Kyle Hayes. Like, when Kyle Hayes opens up there, it's like Jack McCaffrey in full flow getting the ball. He's your most dangerous attacker when he has the ball, and one of the players that opposition fear most. And also, he's been played inside, and Kyle Hayes is a brilliant hurler. But there was times yesterday, yourself, if you're playing inside, like, your touch has to be the best on the field. Like, it does, because you get such little time on the ball. And there was a couple of times yesterday where he just dropped balls, fumbled balls, didn't get the first touch in. Like, you play, say, Patrick Horgan at his pomp inside. Like, touch is like lightning. The ball is into his hand and it's over the bar. And the defender, like, he doesn't know where to look. Tony Kiely was the same yesterday with 2 or 3 balls come in. Actually got 3 in a row from play off Sean Finn and caused him serious bother when he was in there. But Hayes' first touch is not lightning like that. And he doesn't look totally natural. Like, you'd probably think you'd fancy your chances of spoiling him on a 50-50 ball if it comes in like that. Now, if he gets it in his hand, he'll just barrel through you, and he's under pressure. I suppose, as you said, it's probably a needs must, but they've probably made the half-back line a little bit weaker as a result. I'd love to see Hayes out at centre forward, but with Galan not playing yesterday, I suppose they felt like they needed him in the full forward line. But it is robbing Peter to pay Paul a small bit. They'll be hoping, I'm sure, that they can get Peter Casey back to feature at some stage, and obviously get Galan back, get Keane Lynch back. When everyone's back, where does he play? Because is it too much of a departure to say that he could start an All-Ireland semi-final or final wing back, having not played there? Well, to be fair, he played there only a couple of months ago in the league, so maybe it's not that big of a deal to make a big switch like that if everybody's back and everybody's fit.
I think he will go back there, because I don't think they're getting the most out of him there. And I think it's amazing to think that one of Dan Morrissey or Mike Casey will lose out, but I think ultimately, if they have everyone available, probably one of them will. Do you know what? I talked after the Tipperary game about how at times when you put enough pressure on Limerick, the skill sets, and I mean the ball striking, I think they're brilliant controllers of the ball. They do an awful lot so well, game plan, brilliant. But now and again, the striking breaks down when they're under pressure. We saw it in the Munster final last year. We saw it more recently, and that to me was proof that, yeah, this is confirmation that does happen. And I think Clare did it as well. There was a few times that Limerick players misstruck balls. There was one instance early in the first half where one player refused to shoot in his right, passed it off to another player who looked really uncomfortable shooting on their right. I don't want to pick out any players per se, but I thought they were made to look uncomfortable. Again, they're down a couple of their most high quality players and maybe they come into the team and that's not as pronounced. But I thought, once again, the secret, like it is to any team really, you put enough pressure on and the same flow, the same ease of striking and knocking over scores won't be there, because, I mean, they specialise at work the ball through the hands, obviously deliver when required too. They're brilliant at that. Work the ball through the hands until someone is sprinting through around the 45 and they just tap over a simple score. Under pressure, it's not quite so simple.
Yeah, funny that you should say that. I thought it was a tactic that Tip used last week, that they were happy enough to let certain players shoot or have the ball at different stages. And I thought that happened yesterday a couple of times as well, where Clare were happy enough for the ball to be in, certain players' hands from distance because they felt like they weren't going to hurt them. Or it was a 50-50 chance of a shot. Whereas if Dermot Burns gets the ball, it's probably a 90% chance of a score. So I do think that's something that potentially teams have cottoned on to. I 100% agree there. Just you mentioned about the intensity of the game. There was a couple of instances, like Peter Duggan probably didn't have his best game for Clare on the scoreboard. There was one stage in the 18th minute though where he loses his hurl and he just takes off like an absolute lunatic after Barry Nash, like a lunatic. Like he was putting so much effort into the sprint. It was amazing.
And he got a hit in eventually, didn't he?
Yeah, and he got hit in and just kicked the ball off. I thought that was brilliant. Will O'Donoghue got a couple of big turnovers, as is his wont. He got a couple of huge ones. There was one on Ryan Taylor in the 39th minute in particular that stood out. And Ryan Taylor struggled a small bit in around that middle third in the early stages, thundered into it. Yeah, thundered into it in that last maybe 20-25 minutes. But like, it was kill or be killed out there. Like, it was kill or be killed. And so a lot of lads were killed at different stages, but you just had to have such a cool head and never panic. And in fairness to, like, cornerbacks nowadays are not renowned for their coolness under pressure with the ball, but there was a different stage yesterday where Paul Flanagan was just ultra cool on the ball. They never panicked. They never delivered a 100-yard ball. Really, really cool. And obviously it was the same the far end with Limerick.
I was thinking yesterday how much I admire what Paul Flanagan is doing, because for years I think he did have some injuries, but to be that late in your career in inter-county sense, late 20s, and then all of a sudden to really firmly establish yourself in the last maybe year and a half, I think that's something, an example to any player about, if you kind of feel like you have the stuff, keep going, because it's never too late. Even Paddy Fitzpatrick, I suppose, the guy who was playing wing back last year, the very big tall guy, he's another example that it can happen late in if you keep going. So I thought Paul Flanagan, part of a brilliant full back line for Clare, but at the other end too, there's no slouches in that Limerick full back line.
Yeah, just on Paddy Fitzpatrick, he was actually warming up at different stages yesterday. He could start, I'd say. He could start next weekend, I'd say. He's in around the mix and I think hasn't played much hurling this year, so I wouldn't be surprised if he played. You mentioned about the Clare full back line. You'd have to say Hayes, Cleary and Flanagan had the upper hand on the Limerick full forward line.
Against Hayes, Flanagan and...
Yeah. Apparently, I think Paul Flanagan and Seamus Flanagan are somewhat related. I don't know, it's the second or third cousins, but one of the...
There was two David Reedys playing as well at one
stage,
funny. 26.
Yeah, Owen Brennan was saying to me yesterday, the Clare-based journalist, that they were related. So it was just funny. And even Rory Hayes, at different stages yesterday, he's just like, he is your Sean Finn cornerback. Like, sticky as anything, will get the hurling without us getting in. Well. Yeah, and they're all just so good on the ball too, just really, really good on the ball. But it was funny, like, even from a Clare point of view, they got the draw with the All-Ireland champions. You're probably looking at their forward line and thinking Robin Mounsey was probably quiet. That's probably great for him, I'd say. It has never been exposed to that before. Yeah. Shane Meehan came in and made a decent impact. Dave Fitzgerald was good in the half forward line. Ryan Taylor came into it near the end. Shane O'Donnell was probably one of his quieter games. Worked very hard, all right. But, outside of Tony Kelly and probably David Fitzgerald, the Clare forwards didn't light it up. So you're thinking potentially from a Clare point of view that there's a lot of room for improvement here as well, which is a great thing to have. And as I said, I do think exposure to that sort of game will bring them on no end. And confidence is at a real high in Clare at the moment. There's optimism is going through the roof at the moment. They backed up the first 2 wins and delivered a big performance, albeit the caveat of Galan and Lynch being missing is obviously there. But you can only do what you can do against a team on a given day. And that was a really, really strong performance from Clare.
Yeah, I'm really loving watching Limerick lately. And the tests that teams are giving them. I mean, obviously they sell off Tipperary eventually. They're finding different ways to win every day. Like, they are brilliant to watch. It was getting a small bit boring the last couple of seasons when they were winning games almost at a canter, sort of holding teams at arm's length. They've been tested so much with the injuries. You just can't but be impressed with what they're doing. They're just such a team that I won't say they rely on marginal gains, but they really do help them across the line by an extra few points here and there. Just think of all the different things, like the sideline cuts. Wasn't there that stat a few weeks ago that they had 4 sideline cuts against, was it Waterford or Tip, whichever it was, and they'd got a return of 3 points from it, whereas, you know, other teams are still trying to cut the ball over from 60 yards, which is hit and miss. It certainly won't get you a return of 3 from 4. Not most days. I know Joe Canning scored 4 sidelines there in the All-Ireland semi against Limerick a few years ago, but that's not really going to happen every day. So looking after the ball and maintaining possession is, you know, it's a marginal gain. The fact they're using the bamboo hurley, some of them, and other counties are too. I mean, I found out before the extra striking, it must give you 20% extra on the striking. Obviously, their athleticism, S&C, I think they have an edge over most teams in the gym. The hunting in packs, they probably do it better. The hand passing through the lines, they are brilliant at doing it and working in triangles and making the opposition kind of, you know, wrong footing them and making them have to work that bit harder. Then even, you know, when they can see 2 scores in a row. I mean, Tipperary, obviously a lot of those players are new enough to this level. When Limerick got a bit of a run, some players should have gone down with the old contact lenses. You know, this is something that Limerick do, all these marginal gains. And even during the game yesterday, you were there, it seemed like they were screaming at officials for absolutely everything. You know, it was like having a load of Roy Keanes on the field. They dunt a lad and give away a foul. They're screaming at the referee that was never a free. Line ball to the opposition. They're roaring at the referee saying that was our line ball. And it was just so evident. And I think ultimately 1 or 2 decisions will probably go your way down the line by doing that. And I just think it's another marginal gain. But I say it almost as if you're not doing this playing against them, you're kind of silly. Because you have to win a battle kind of in more ways than just for the ball.
Yeah, I'd love to know what their in-house games are like, because based on what they can perceive a free to be in a match, there must be killings going on in the Gaelic grounds. It's John Kiely referees the matches actually, so I don't know if he swallows the whistle like Brian Cody would back in the day, and I don't know, are they, you know, it's an awkward one. I wonder, are they giving him abuse if he doesn't blow free, or if he does blow free? Because I know, and I'd say you'd be the same. Doesn't matter who the referee is, if you feel like you've been hard done by, you'll hurl a bit of abuse their way, like within reason, like how's that free or whatever. But they definitely are very, very vocal in that regard. I think they have, as you say, it's marginal gains. They've all these things honed to the nth degree. And
even the short puck outs, you know.
Yeah. And I do like, and I was looking at it yesterday. David Fitzgerald gave Nicky Quaid like just a 5-yard window at one stage to put a ball to Tom Morrissey down the line, and there was no hesitation, and the ball was just over his head, straight to his hand, no messing. The ball wasn't here or up high or anything like that. It was into his path, and they were away again. And even, you know, when they were going for that winning score at the end, you know, I was kind of surprised that Graham Mulcahy let the ball, or tried to turn the ball back and didn't just, you know, he would have given himself a chance to win a free if he'd went down on the ball, could have came in, could have been a foul, and that was surprising, because that's kind of unlike them as well. But they definitely have the marginal gains honed to the nth degree. And as you say, if you keep shouting and looking for a decision, and, you know, you change the referee's thought process a small bit maybe as well, or get inside his head, and that might
make the referee doubt himself. Eventually he's going to, geez, I'll nearly give the free just to shut that lad up. I mean, and the people say it works the other way. You know, Hegarty ends up getting a red card, and maybe that's the referees kind of sick of it at the same time, that they can influence you the other way without the referee, you know, subconsciously almost, you turn the referee against you, because you often hear that as well from managers. Look, lads, the referee's not going to take it. You're going to turn him against us just play nice with him.
Yeah.
But there's different ways to go at it.
Just on that, Shane, I remember chatting to a referee the game. It was between Offaly and Galway. It was a challenge game. He was an Offaly-based referee. And the Galway manager at the time shouted to him. It was a free given to Offaly about 20, 25 minutes in. And he just said, come on, ref. That's 10 frees now. 10 frees to Offaly have given. And we've only gotten 5. And I remember chatting to the referee after. And he said, I don't even think that was true. But he got inside my head. And I was thinking, geez, am I imbalancing it here? Am I giving too many frees to Offaly here or whatever? So things that are said, while they mightn't have an effect at that moment in time, you're looking later on in the game and you're thinking, I wonder, does that have an effect on the referee's call late in the game if he thinks he's after been biased? Or, the potential for bias has been planted in his head by the opposition manager.
Yeah, and even during the Waterford Cork game, I think there was a huge imbalance in terms of the frees midway through the second half, 17-5. I just can't remember, and my scribbling isn't very legible there. Or as my schoolmate used to say when we were back in, secondary school, my writing is inedible. But there was a bit of an imbalance in that. So Cork beat Waterford Walsh Park 222-119. And I suppose I tweeted it a few weeks ago. It was the night of your glorious wedding party. That did this defeat for Waterford against Limerick, was it a significant failure? And at the time, I thought it is, because obviously Limerick were down those players, and people are talking about how Waterford are arriving now, they're league champions and all that. And I'm wondering, did the hype get to them? Are they suffering because they were very flat and from early enough in the game? I'm talking to people around me and messages, WhatsApp groups and all that. And I'm like, it's here for Cork. If they have the belief, it's here for them, because Waterford just didn't look at it.
I only saw the last 20 minutes of this game because it was in transit to Ennis at the time. I could not get over the lack of atmosphere in Walsh Park. I could not get over the lack of vocals, we'll say, even from the home support. I couldn't get over how flat Waterford were. Looked like a team that this was their 4th week in a row playing. Was that like a general thing the whole way throughout the game? Fair enough, Cork brought something different to the table. And, the response that we probably expected after the Limerick game came, would say, on the back of 2 bad performances. But there's surely, Waterford shoulders an awful lot of the blame here. And maybe that rallying cry from Lee and Cattle during the week, I don't know, maybe was there a smack of desperation off it or something, or did he know potentially that morale was a small bit low in the camp because they offered so little yesterday? I couldn't believe it. Their championship survival was on the line, and I couldn't believe how little they offered. And now they've left it in other teams' hands. It's obviously in their hands in the sense that if they get a win, they've given themselves a chance. But they're looking for Tip to do them a favour now, it's amazing how things have turned. It really is amazing.
Tip will be looking to do Liam Cahill a favour. You can be sure of that already. Tip will be hoping that Clare can do them a favour at the same time. Do you know what? It reminded me of Limerick Tipperary in terms of atmosphere, because Tipperary didn't really show up for the Limerick game, as you know, and maybe Cork showed up maybe more in hope than expectation. Maybe there wasn't a huge Cork crowd there. People maybe who were at the game might comment in and let us know. But maybe the Waterford support, they're expecting and waiting to be entertained. Like Gladiator, are you not entertained? And it wasn't happening. And maybe all of a sudden that mood sort of went around the ground. And then all of a sudden this happens and it peters out a little bit. Like the red card, fair enough. That definitely had an impact on proceedings. That was the 63rd minute. And at that stage, Cork were 218-117 ahead. But there was a sense that this is slipping from Waterford even at that stage. I wouldn't just put it down to the red card only.
Agreed, yeah.
That had 3 wides in a row coming into that. And even before that, they had gotten a couple of scores. But Cork were just so efficient. I mean, if I told you in the second half that Cork scored 11 of 15 attempts, you'd be pretty damn impressed there. Waterford just put away 8 of 22 and didn't get their goal chance. Obviously, they scored 1. But they just weren't scoring their goal chance. They got that one in the first half through Michael Kiely. And to be honest, I think Patrick Kern, who was very good and actually got a point from play, one of 2 hurling goalkeepers who scored from open play over the weekend, he probably could have done a little bit better with that opportunity. But I have to say, Waterford missing 7 of their last 9 chances. I think maybe they got a little bit of the yips.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, that's kind of what it looked like. funny. It's hard to understand. They look like a team devoid of confidence. Even some of the the shot selections in the second half were just very surprising. They were low percentage shots. I remember Darragh Lyons even throwing up a ball with about 10 minutes to go in amongst a load of traffic in the middle of the field. Neil Montgomery did the same. In fairness, his went over, but it wasn't, your normal shot selection that you expect. And even like, you don't like picking out a player, but even just, when Patrick Collins came out with that ball at the end and Shane Bennett dived in and picked up a yellow, and it summed up the whole, from what I saw and the vibe that I got from Waterford that day, that they just weren't on it. The Austin Gleeson red card, probably had a bit of an effect, but it didn't look like the game was for turning at that stage. It didn't look like, I just don't know where the spark was going to come from. You were asking me last night, just when we were chatting there, did Ballygunner's run to the All-Ireland Club final have a massive effect on Waterford? Has it drained a lot of lads? I was listening to the game on the radio for the first half, and I didn't hear Deise Hutchinson's name even mentioned. He was obviously kept under wraps, and in the last 15 or 20 minutes that I saw, he was kept under wraps as well. So I don't know, like, he was in good form, you'd say, coming into this game, but it's so flat from Waterford. It's so surprising. Because they knew what was on the line here. And I just, very, very surprised by it. And I know I said to you that, or the Cork or your Cliff Horse, you nearly followed them over the edge, but in fairness, they brought you back to the edge again. And they really delivered for you when the need was greatest. And I tell you what impressed me most, even, Conor Lahan had a chance just to tap over a ball from about 30 yards out near the end. And they were mad for it. He went in, gave the ball to Shane Kingston, tried to create another goal chance, tried to go for the throw. Remember, he hopped the ball and pulled on it over the bar. But whatever it was with Cork, the penny obviously dropped and a flick switched, and they looked like a different prospect completely. They looked like the Cork that we saw at different stages throughout the league and at different stages in last year's championship, probably before the All-Ireland final again.
Yeah, and I suppose, like, Seamus Harnedy, what a warhorse. It's not that he's all that old, he's something like 31, but that was a performance that was reminiscent of the 2013 All-Ireland. Remember when both himself and Conor Ryan were pulling balls out of the sky and both having a great game? I thought he was really good here. Patrick Horgan became the all-time leading scorer in the Hurling Championship. But it's been an interesting year, I suppose, from Patrick Horgan's point of view. We were one of a few, I suppose, places that talked at the start of the year that maybe he mightn't necessarily be a guaranteed starter this year. He's 33, I think, going on 34. Been such a brilliant player for them and may continue to be. He's 34 now. He just went 34 a couple of weeks ago. But I suppose then he gave his answer in the league, I think, against Galway, and gave it the shush. But, this was a tough day at the office for him. Like, he did okay. Like, he was very good against Clare. So there's nothing to say that he won't be back starting again, but it's just, it feels like now the mood is that if Kieran Kingston decided, I want youth only, and if I'm going to play someone on the inside line, they need to be able to do 30 or 40 sprints, left, right and centre, 30 and 40 yards. That's tough going for a 34-year-old. And there's no getting away from it. He did have a couple of misses before he was taken off in the 40th minute. There was a stick pass that was given to him, and I think it was Seamus Harnedy flicked it to him. There was a lovely little flowing move. I think Dara Fitzgibbon had made a nice run. Then Seamus Harnedy did a stick pass in. And you would have thought, like, obviously a hand pass is easier to catch than a stick pass, but you would have thought he would have held it. Then he's running towards the 14. And if that lad lets go, those wrists are going to cause a bit of damage. And it surely would have been a goal. And then a minute later, he ended up having a bad wide, a nice crossfield ball by Niall O'Leary. He steps back inside and throws it wide. And you can't ignore the impact that Tim O'Mahony made when he came in up front. Like, interestingly, he is a team player, but sometimes he does individualistic type things when he's playing wing back, and he runs forward and he does great stuff like that goal against Dublin. But other days he puts himself in the team in a little bit of bother. But funnily enough, he played full forward for the under-20s or under-21s, whichever he was of the age grade for. He came out, one ball in front, and popped it to the man coming through. It was just ultimate sort of team role, playing full forward rather than turning and looking for his score over the shoulder. I just wonder, is Horgan going to get back into the team just as he becomes the top scorer ever? Is he now under pressure to get back in?
Yeah, potentially, Shane. I haven't got the impression this year at any stage that he's been really happy maybe with his own role or even with his own game or the level that it's in at the moment. Like I even remember him, I was down at the league game in Burr. He only came on that day. He did that kind of shush thing when he got that goal against Limerick. That's kind of uncharacteristic for him. It's signs of a guy that maybe isn't that happy in his game. He doesn't look even standing over frees. I just don't have the same confidence in him at the moment. That's just something I'm looking at myself and I'm thinking, I'm not sure if this lad is at one with his game at the moment. By all accounts, from a few people that were down there, I don't think he was particularly happy with being pulled off yesterday. And you're always going to see that, a guy that's played to such a level, had his game so high in recent years, and he's just not hitting those levels. It is very, very frustrating. But you can't take it away from Tim O'Mahony when he came in. And in fairness to the Cork management, they rolled the dice and weren't afraid. The talk had maybe been, do Cork need a big, strong player up in the forward line? And O'Mahony provided that yesterday. Even I remember him hooking and harrying there and winning a free for a Waterford player over carrying at one stage as well. They just looked like a different prospect, didn't they? They looked like a different team. They had that mean kind of edge to them yesterday that we probably thought we'd get against Clare, but they definitely produced it yesterday. Will Horgan start the next day? It's probably a 50-50 call. I think they'd probably be happy enough with Conor Lahan hitting frees, and then it's a matter of how much is Horgan offering you from play. The thing is as well, if he's not particularly happy in his game, maybe great players like that will not be happy with playing a super sub role. They won't. That's just the nature of it. So the conversations behind the scene, trying to build him back up, whether it's for starting or building him back up to be an impact sub the next day, are going to be really, really fascinating.
Yeah, but it's like I said for Tipperary against Clare. There's three brilliant forwards in Jason Ford, John McGrath and Nolan McGrath, but three players, none of whom you would say are athletes of the Limerick type. Just to give an example, if you want to drive the other team back physically when they're trying to come out with the ball, I'm not sure you can balance your forward line that way. So in a way, Tipperary were then forced, because of injuries, to throw in all the young lads, and all of a sudden they compete much better with Limerick because you have that athleticism and speed around. And now, I suppose, in a way, Cork, look, I'm not doubting Patrick Horgan. Like, how many times have we said how brilliant he is?
Top class,
but when you've got more youth in the forward line, that's brilliant. Like, how many All-Irelands did Dublin win from bringing class lads off the bench? So Horgan, funnily enough, he could, let's say Cork get on a brilliant run all of a sudden and they get back through the back door and they get in third, and then they have a winnable game against the Joe McDonough team. Then they win a quarter-final, and all of a sudden, let's say they get rolling. Meet a Leinster team in the All-Ireland semi-final and get into an All-Ireland, right? You could have Horgan in a situation coming on for the last 20 minutes, dragging his team over the line, like a Kevin McManaman, like a Bernard Brogan later on in his career, like, even Cormac Costello when he's a young guy, but he has the quality and class, comes on and turns the game when everything else is slowed down. So that's what could end up happening yet. But
it's a matter of accepting. It's a matter of accepting the role. If that is the case, I'll put it to you this way: Kieran Kingston is in a really difficult spot next week. Does he pick players that are really in form, as in the likes of Alan Connolly and these guys, Tim O'Mahony potentially starting in the forward line, or does he go with Horgan, who is probably out of form but has been class for the last 10 or 15 years? So it's a difficult kind of conundrum, and you do want to try, like a player like Horgan, you do want to keep him happy to some respect. Plus, you're going to be changing your free taker. So the conversations behind the scenes there, if he is going to be sprung from the bench the next day, will be fascinating, because there's no point. Like, if they do spring him from the bench, you'd imagine he has a point to prove. So if he takes that potential setback the right way, it could be a huge thing for Cork to have in their arsenal, to have a player like that coming on with the bit between his teeth to carry them over the line.
And there's no room for sentiment now, because let's say Kieran Kingston has another defeat. Chances are that's the end of his managerial reign with Cork. Now, maybe he'll want to leave at the end of the season anyway, but just because the mood around the team this year, this was a great win. But if they don't get through Munster, or if they get beaten the next day by Tipperary with a poor performance, like, he needs to pick a team that he thinks is going to win. And
the thing about Shane is the fact that he's dropped his own young lad numerous times means that he will do whatever clearly will do whatever it takes selection wise. So if they don't think Horgan is delivering at the moment, someone else will be in.
Yeah, and his own young lad's a good joke, and if he can get that consistency going, he's hard to stop. I'm wondering, will Ozzie Gleeson start against Clare now? Because obviously they need the result, but I'm just thinking they didn't appeal the red card ahead of the league final. And will the frustration be there? And he'll just say, "Do you know what? I'll leave you on the bench." But he's basically been their best player, and over the last couple of years. And just to flesh out that Ballygunner point a little bit more, Peter Hogan hasn't found himself back in the starting team after being so good in the previous couple of years. Desi Hutchinson, there's been flashes of it, but even that game in the league final, I think he only touched the ball 4 times, and we talked about, well, his work off the ball and dragging players around was brilliant. But again, he's probably not getting into the game as much. Even his goal against, he did well enough against Tipperary, but he just hasn't set it absolutely alight, other than the Limerick game, where I thought he was absolutely brilliant when he got the ball. Ian Kenny, we haven't seen him yet at all. And this is a guy who kept Owen Cody very quiet in the All-Ireland Club final a few months ago. I'm presuming he's carrying an injury. I can't understand why he wouldn't be in there either. So it's just something like Pádraig Mahoney wasn't in the 26. I'm wondering, was he injured or what the situation was? So, it's going to be a brilliant final round. But let's talk about the Leinster Championship, and I'll go through the results. Westmeath 215, Wexford 21. Westmeath arguably the team of the weekend, the story of the weekend. Galway 237, Laois 21 points. That is a mother and father of a baton there. And Kilkenny 325, Dublin 17 points. Again, this was a fairly punishing result. I was at it in Parnell Park, and I have to say Dublin were very, very disappointing. And, midway through the second half, I'm just thinking, can someone blow the final whistle, please?
Yeah, the last 15 or 20 minutes totally had that feel to it. It was absolute one-way traffic. Imagine you'd said beforehand that Kilkenny are going to win by double scores. This was would you have been a bit surprised if anybody said that this was a draw game? No, you wouldn't. A draw in the end. And just quickly moving on to the Westmeath result, we already just focus on that for a couple of minutes. What a result for them. In fairness, and this is not totally out of the blue either. Very competitive with Kilkenny for long stretches in their first game. Galway blew them away, in fairness, in Pearse Stadium the second day. Really competitive with Dublin again the last day. And then they got themselves into a position, and yet again in Mullingar. How many times have they produced big results in Mullingar? Their three championship best performances so far this year came in Mullingar. They obviously, the under-21s beat Kilkenny there. When was it? 2016. They had a big championship win over Offaly there. Their first in Manny Moon. I think that was around, what was it? 2017, 2018, I think as well. Just their ability to produce results there knows no ends. And Derek McNicholas, who's been on the scene since 2004, is only fitting that he would be the one that would come in and get that goal. Now Wexford will be disgusted with the concession of the 2 goals at the end.
High balls in.
Yeah, for a seasoned team, to be conceding goals like that. But there was that real desperate element to it. Anything could happen. They were after leaving themselves in that position. I think they had 21 wides overall, 14 in the second half. We'll probably talk a bit about Wexford, but the story really is Westmeath. And I know Joe Fortune said it after. Such a real unique scenario where the young lads in Westmeath were running around looking for the Westmeath signatures after the game. The Wexford players were not that's not to say they weren't going looking for Rory O'Connor's signature or Lee Chin's signature, but they were looking for Tommy Doyle's, they were looking for Niall Mitchell's, they were looking for Derek McNicholas. And the impact potentially that a result like that has on a captive young audience going forward is absolutely massive. And I know, just fair play to them. It's exactly what they deserve based on 2 of their performances in Leinster beforehand, and also they only need a draw now against Laois next weekend. So just that game was going to be tight anyway, so they don't necessarily have to win that game because they already have a point on the board, and that gives them a huge advantage going into next weekend.
Yeah, and I mean, Westmeath, they've pushed Kilkenny hard, pushed Dublin hard, both teams for about an hour. They got the rewards here, so that's going to set up a classic match with Laois in the last day out. And Laois, I mean, last year they were poor for long spells. They had a good performance against Waterford, and that set them up to beat Antrim in the relegation clash. Maybe Laois will come to the boil in the last game. Kilkenny were very impressive. There was 4 changes announced before the game. I think they had concerns with some players. So it wasn't the case of just this thing that they knew the team maybe on the Thursday when they announced it initially, and then all of a sudden they, but they always knew all along who would start. I think there was real issues coming into the game. Richie Reid started, Cian Kenny started, Alan Murphy started, Mossy Keown. All the changes worked. Cian Kenny kind of played very close to goal. We're used to him at midfield, but he was excellent. He slung over a nice few points there. Martin Keown with 2-1, thought he was really good. TJ Reid took over the game in the second half when it kind of, he'd had a quiet first half, got a nice point for himself, intercepting a sideline, but then really came into it in the second half. And just Dublin were so poor. I've said this to you before, and I really thought it after the game, that Dublin have tried to go from being the big physical athletic side, the manufactured hurlers, which was unfairly said many times, they've tried to change to more of a stick work type team, more of a flowing, classy hurlers. But they're now in a situation where, especially at Parnell Park, which is very tight, they're losing the physical fight, and they're also not quite the level of hurlers that Kilkenny are. Like, the ball wasn't sticking to the inside line. There was great ball going in, and it just was not sticking. So now they got both out-fought and out-hurled, which leads to an absolute hammering. And I think this was the real low point of that. So it might lead to a little bit of soul searching. But I think, unfortunately, they just don't have the hurlers.
And they're in a really tough spot going to Salt Hill next Saturday as well. Like, they don't have a particularly good record there, you know. Yeah, it's a tough spot, and to lift morale after that. Listen, you can't write off anyone in this championship, because the ability of teams to produce a brilliant performance after an abysmal performance. Cork, a case in point. Tipperary, probably a case in point as well. So Dublin, it's backs to the wall stuff next weekend, but just based on what we saw on home side, like, they were just totally out-taught, totally out-fought. The ball just wasn't sticking, as you say, with Ronan Hayes and the lads inside. And fair play to Conor Delaney. There was a good bit of talk about, you know, how good Hugh Lawler has been, and he's been brilliant in recent years. Probably one of their better players. And he's like looking like he's going to be out for a long spell with a fractured hand. Conor Delaney just came in there absolutely seamlessly, and it's amazing. Like, Martin Keown, who was a late change. Cian Kenny, who was a late change, like 4 points from Cian Kenny inside. I just wouldn't have seen him inside. He's generally played out in the half line a lot of the time and in around the middle of the field, even for the Village. They were just huge players. Delaney again, another fella that came in at the 11th hour. Just a brilliant display. Just a quick one before I know we're probably going to move on to something else here. Just Laois are under serious pressure for next weekend. Cheddar Plunkett, they're more than likely said they're going to be without Chad Dwyer and Mark Dowling. They're going to be without Willie Dunphy, John Lennon, Podge Delaney, Dermot Conway and Jordan Walsh. They're all definitely out, according to Cheddar. Now, whether all those guys are definitely out or not will remain to be seen, because this is their last game. Some lads might be patched together and play. But given the low ebb that Laois are coming into this game in, and, you know, the high ebb, shall we say, that Westmeath are coming in, you'd definitely be favouring Westmeath, and they've been the far more consistent team throughout this Leinster Championship. But Laois have shown before that they can produce this once-off result and save their bacon, and Laois supporters will be hoping that they can do it again.
Yeah, we're going to talk football now for a while. We've got former Wicklow manager and former Kildare Under-20 All-Ireland winner manager Davy Burke on the line with us at the moment. Davy, how are things with you?
Hi lads, as well.
We're good, yeah. Look, I'm going to let Michael take over just for a minute or two here, but just to reflect on some of the results. Kildare 121, Westmeath 215, Dublin 127, Meath 114. That's the Leinster semi-finals. You might just give us your thoughts on those games, Davy.
They were like two poor challenging games, Shane. To be honest with you, they were very, very hard watched. Now the ground probably didn't lend itself to it either. I think Croke Park need to really learn to take these games out of there. But yeah, first of all, the Kildare game, it really lacked any intensity. It lacked any physicality. Westmeath didn't press up on the kickouts, and Kildare walked out every ball, which provided Kildare's decent forward line with great supply. And, you know, they were always kind of at arm's length, and they always kind of had enough in the bag to win the game. And I never felt there was any doubt. But from a Kildare point of view, I'd be fairly disappointed with how close that Westmeath team ran them and pushed them. And like that Westmeath team had a poor Division 3 campaign, really kind of struggled mid-table Division 3. And, you know, Kildare would rate ourselves as a Division 1 county. And really and truly, you should be putting these teams to the sword. And when Kildare were 5 or 6 points up yesterday, I fully expected them to kick on and win by 8 or 9 points. And that's very, very disappointing that we weren't capable of doing that, you know. And we left Westmeath right in the game for right up till the end, you know. And it's probably a bit of a carbon copy of the year previous, where it was the very same game, semi-final Leinster, Kildare the better team, but left for Westmeath right in it, right up till the end, and it ended up a bit nervy near the end. But so look, all in all, Kildare just had better forwards, more firepower, seemed to have the better setup, pressed up on the kickouts, caused Westmeath's keeper a good bit of problems on that front. But overall, it's still concerning moving forward. I'd be honest, for both teams, I'd be concerned moving forward. The second game, then obviously the Dublin
we
game
might
again.
just stay on Kildare for a minute, Davy, if that's okay. Just rather than crossing over. The positives from Kildare, their attack has been really good this year. Like Ben McCormack, you've had him at club level with Sarsfields. He's taken his game to another level. They do, like Jimmy Hyland's been brilliant. A few times I saw him in the league, he was outstanding. Obviously, they've Daniel Flynn in there as well, Derek Kerwin. They do have the attacking players that can really hurt a team.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. This is a hugely exciting Kildare team. There's no doubt about it. Like Ben McCormack kicked 5 points yesterday from centre forward, 4 from play and 1 from a mark. He kicked 5. Did he kick 4 2 weeks ago against Laois from centre forward off and play? The inside line yesterday, starting inside line returned 111. Jimmy 1-4, Daniel 2, and Dara 5. Dara Kerwin 5. So look. And Neil Flynn's only getting 5 minutes at the end of games. Paddy Woodgate didn't feature. Shane O'Sullivan, Brian McLaughlin. There's huge firepower now and genuine scoring forwards. We've no doubt about it, Michael. 8 or 9 forwards who could all start for that team. No doubt about it now. Real quality, dangerous, potent forwards. And I'm just so hugely excited. But I'm just struggling to get my head around what the issue is. I wonder, have we got a balance issue in our wing backs? They're both very attacking, Tony and Kevin. And, I'm just wondering, are we getting caught too high up the field? We had a very soft centre yesterday. I can only imagine 2 weeks' time if Dublin start running down that middle like Westmeath did. So hugely exciting going forward, but defensively we've major issues,
Just talk to me a little bit about that as a manager even. You'd often hear some people, barroom pundits, shall we say, picking a team, and you'd pick 6 brilliant forwards that are all going to light it up. But that's not the way football or hurling works, and it's the same with a defence. And it does seem like there's a bit of balance needed there. You might need a holding wing back, shall we say, that's always going to be there. You just talk me through that, and it is like that is worrying. Like I was just following the game when I was down in Ennis, and Kildare, it looked like a game that Kildare should have been winning by 9 or 10, and to let a team like Westmeath, with due respect to them, a Division 3 team, back into the game, like there, as you said there are worries that the Dubs could potentially cut loose and slalom through that defence at different stages.
Yeah, look, defending's all about balance. Or every team setup is about balance, and fairness to Kildare. Now they're not. We could easily start 6 forwards in Kildare, easily, Michael, if we wanted it. But in fairness to the lads, they start 4 out and out forwards, which I believe is the right way to go about it. That's personally my opinion, And then with Paul Cribben and Alex Byrne, I just wonder. I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of the camp. I'm not there, but I'd wonder, does Paul see himself as a 5th forward rather than a working wing forward? And Alex as well. They're real talented players, these boys, but I'm just not sure. And then you've Tony Archibald, who's I would have had him under 20, an excellent young player, real pacey, came from a soccer background, very talented. But Tony has one thing on his mind a lot, and it's forward, and he can do some real damage. But I suppose yesterday we seen they leave holes behind them, So if you're and in my opinion, Kevin Flynn needs to be let do what Kevin Flynn does, because he's so good at it. In my opinion, he's one of the best wing backs in Ireland. So I wouldn't be taken away from Kevin's game, but I'm just not sure. Whereas in the league, at times we looked far more secure. At times now, there was days we were exposed, but at times we look far more secure with Dara Ryan or with a David Hyland or someone wing back, because maybe they were more defensive-minded, more footballers. Whereas when you've got a combination of runners and a combination of attack-minded lads, all in the 5, 7, 10, 12 positions, I just find you get exposed a bit easier. You get exposed a bit easier. And it's very, very difficult, Michael, to get the balance. I'm not saying I have the answer to the balance here. I'm just saying it's definitely something that needs to be looked at, because our middle was wide open time and time again. And as you said, all due respect to Westmeath, but they struggled in Division 3. They struggled, they beat a poor Longford side in the championship. In my opinion, Division 3 this year, I would have watched a good bit of it, keeping an eye on Wicklow, keeping an eye on certain things, and it was a very, very poor division. I thought the standard was chronic in it. And look, where did it show up? What did Kildare do to Louth? What did Cavan do to Antrim? They both, were right at the top of it. So really and truly, it was at that standard of a division. So the balance they have to get right. I would say Kildare will need to look at personnel changes in that middle 8 for the next day, because I'm just not sure we have the defensive-minded lads willing to do that grit, that work, that horrible stuff that it really has to be done. And it's selfless stuff to block up middles, to get contact on. It just wasn't there yesterday, and that's a concern,
Just one player that springs to mind to me that potentially could be a problem solver there, and I just haven't seen him involved recently. What's Owen Doyle's situation at the moment?
Yeah, he picked up a bad knock to his knee, as far as I'm aware. So I think Owen Doyle's out for a couple of months. I think.
Okay.
I don't know the ins and outs of it. But I do think Owen took a bad knock to his knee. So I think, but there's other lads. David Hyland was captain in the squad last year and is only featuring bits and pieces. So I'm not sure. We are looking for legs and brilliant. Paddy McDermott's an excellent young lad, but very much bomb, and maybe the substitutions had a part to play in this. I know they took Paul Cribben off on 58 or 59 minutes and or was it 50 minutes, I think, and put Paddy McDermott on. And Paddy's very, very exciting. I would have coached him in Sigerson there. Hugely exciting, attacking wing back. But now you have Tony Archibald and Paddy McDermott at 5 and 10. And my God, them two boys just want to go and go and go. And they're hugely exciting footballers for the future for Kildare, and athletic. And they're probably up there with the most athletic there is. But the issue there is what's behind them and what are they leaving behind them. And if Tony's gone and Paddy is gone, Michael, what's left behind? And that's where I would like a Dara Ryan or a more defensive wing back there to spot that and be able to identify, go, right, them two boys are gone. I got to tuck across midfield there, tuck across the 6 here and block us up,
Yeah, so David, to talk then about Dublin's 127-114 win over Meath, 3 red cards in the latter stages of this game, but it was never really in doubt. I looked at Meath last year and they only lost by 6 points in that Leinster game against Dublin, and there was only 3 in it going into injury time. Have Meath gone backwards a lot in the 12 months, or have Dublin kind of recovered from last year's, I suppose, stutter?
I think it's a combination of both, Shane. I think Meath have absolutely regressed. They look at a team that's stale. They look at a team that just needs a change, all around. To be honest with you, I think they need a few new players in there. I'd say the management could need to move on as well. It's just 6 or 7 years at that level is hard going for any management team. It's very, very hard going. And yourself from being involved with squad, Shane, listening to the same narrative, the same thing all the time can be very, very hard, no matter who you are and no matter what job you're doing. So, so Meath look to me like a team that have regressed big time. They don't look like they're a happy squad. I seen even Shane McEntee was drafted straight back into the squad after being in the Lebanon for a number of months there. And what does that tell you? I don't know what it tells you, but it doesn't tell me too much if I'm busting my guts up in Dunganny the last 2 or 3 months and there's a man in the Lebanon who's ahead of me, that kind of way. So I'm not sure what's going on in Meath. It's not good. Flip that around to Dublin. I think Dublin have really improved, really got their act back together. Whatever the issues, I think it was clear there was issues last year within the squad, whether it was management or players or both. And it was clearly issues, which is why, Wexford could run them so close in the first round of the championship last year, which is why Meath gave them a little bit of a scare in, so all them things added together. But now you look at Dublin, and for me, you're looking at the real Dublin, or very, very close to being back to the real Dublin, and when you put a forward line of Costello, Paddy Small, Conor Callahan together, Kilkenny, Dean Rock, where are we going? They're right back there. They are right back there. And my fear for Kildare is this Dublin team really seem to be getting their act together at the right time. And if that middle is wide open in 2 weeks' time, it'll be carnage.
I spoke with Cian O'Sullivan, obviously the former Dublin centre-back, last week, and he said, and you've named out a lot of the players there, looking at that panel, anything short of a Sam Maguire Cup is going to be an unsuccessful year. Do you agree with that? Because there's a lot of, it feels fairly wide open. I'm not entirely sure if Kerry have the steel when it comes to it just yet. Maybe they do. It's unproven to this point. But I'm starting to look at Dublin as being the number 1 contender again.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Dublin have slipped back into number 1 in my book too. Obviously Kerry have all the firepower, all the potential. There's no two ways about it. And the bench last day against Cork was very, very impressive. So look, Kerry tick all the boxes. But you're right. Have they the steel? They couldn't face down Tyrone last year in the semi-finals. Have they the steel to get over the line in a tight affair? That's the question that has to be answered. But this Dublin side, for me, the only question is the depth this year. That's the only question is, I think man for man, 15 on 15, they're probably as good as anyone no doubt about it. Maybe even 16 or 17, probably as good as anyone. But when you drop outside of that, I'm just not sure Dublin have the absolute depth that maybe Kerry have. I think Kerry and probably Mayo probably have the two strongest squads, but definitely Kerry, I think, have the 5 out and out quality lads who'd start, whereas I'm just not sure Dublin have that. But that doesn't mean, Shane, they might need that, that kind of way. If you have enough damage done with your 17 or 18, you might need to drop in that,
Yeah, do you think that the miles on the clock that some of these Dublin players have could tell as the season goes on? And I'm talking about brilliant players like Dean Rock, Michael Fitzsimons, James McCarthy. A lot of these players have played year on year on year, and Dublin will need them at their very, very best if they are to actually go all the way and win this.
I could see that being an issue, but I could also see it as, to be honest, last year was probably like half a year off for them, really, Shane. To be honest, really mentally, how tuned in were they? How switched on were they? How hard were they going? Was there extras being done? They didn't strike me as a team that looked like there was a huge amount extra going on. So maybe they've got their rest. Maybe they've got their mental, their mental break or whatever you want to call it. So I don't see that being a huge issue, to be honest with you. I don't see it. This Dublin team, I think it's actually going to work in their favour that they're going to have Fitzsimons and Rock and McCarthy for experience laid on. Whereas, the Gavin Whites, the Dermot O'Connors, the Jack Barrys, these are the Darren Moynahans, they're all only young lads. They're still only, early to mid-20s, whereas you're going in against seasoned 6, 7, 8 times All-Ireland winners. And, when it comes down to decision-making, who would you prefer to have with you? That kind of way.
When you're picking a team, and obviously this wouldn't apply to the Kildare under-20s because they're all young lads, but when you're putting out a team maybe with Wicklow, how much do you balance thinking, okay, I want to put out this 31, 32-year-old because he's a very smart player. He's obviously fit because he can't not be fit as a county player. But maybe I need to put out more of the young lads for energy. Like, where do you weigh it up? Because we were talking about this earlier with the hurling situation as well. How much do you balance? Well, we need the energy to make sure that we stop the opposition coming out or put the press on. But at the same time, we need the experience and class of that older guy.
Yeah, and that was a huge issue I would have had in Wicklow because, to be honest with you, in my first year, I had too many of the experienced lads and really, really smart, very intelligent decision makers and footballers, probably lacking a small bit of legs in the twilight of their career, and then probably didn't have enough of the young lads, whereas in year 2, we had that. But yeah, you really... Look, for me, it's a very, very tricky one, Shane. You have to get the balance right. Really and truly, you're probably looking at 7 or 8 or 9 young lads with 5, probably 4 or 5 experienced men. And then regardless of the position in the field, for me, when the game gets in the crunch, I'd be bringing out if it's a full forward, for example, like Shawnee Furlong and Wicklow. If we were in front with 3 or 4 minutes to go or 5 minutes to go, he'd be drifting out the midfield just to play quarterback, to get on the ball, to keep us going, not to take any contact, keep the ball alive, all these different things using our heads. Whereas a naive, energetic young guy there will run into contact, look to take lads on and get turned over. So you really do have to get the balance right. It's very, very tricky. But you need the athleticism, you need the pace, and you need the good decision maker. So,
Yeah. So you're firmly making Dublin the favourites for the Leinster final anyway.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Now, look, it's a good position for Kildare to be in, because everyone now after yesterday is writing them off. I'm sure Glenn Ryan's probably happy enough this morning to say if they had won by 10 points, everyone would be calling this a 50-50 game or whatever. That kind of way. So, look, I'm sure the bookies will have it 70-30 for Dublin, and Kildare should be delighted with that, in that goes in under the radar. Dublin are expecting nothing from them and have a good cut off them. But really and truly, there's 2 massive weeks of defensive work to be done for this team.
Yeah. Michael, you're wearing the orgaretro.com Derry jersey there. I suppose we'll let you take it away there with Derry.
Yeah, I just made a little switcheroo there just to probably give a doff of the hat to Derry's performance yesterday. Davy, I don't know if you saw much of it, but Derry have been coming under Rory Gallagher, and now they're after producing 2 big shocks. Well, this is probably less of a shock yesterday, but just 2 really good performances against 2 really seasoned teams in Tyrone and Monaghan. Did you see much of this yesterday?
Yeah.
And just talk me through your initial thoughts.
Yeah, so I recorded the game. I was in Croker and I recorded it. We'll watch it when I go home then yesterday evening. Derry are very, very impressive, lads. Hugely impressive team. Now they've beaten both Ulster finalists from last year. They've beaten the All-Ireland champions from last year. They're really on the crest of a wave. And a lot of people would have been talking up Derry, and I was one included in the last couple of months. And it was just, they seemed to have taken a dip towards the end of the league. And maybe it was periodization. Maybe they were doing exactly what they wanted to do. But they seemed to take a dip towards the end of the league. And a few of us went off them. And hands up, I was in that camp too. But my God, they've really turned the corner and they're phenomenally fit. Do you know it's a huge thing from what Derry are doing for me? They used 5 subs yesterday, but they used 2 of them in the 72nd and 75th minute. They're doing this high energetic, high transition, hugely, they're covering some high speed meters, they're covering some ground, right? And they're doing it with 17, 18 players, which is hugely impressive. Hugely impressive to have Benny Hearn, Shane McGuigan, Niall Loughlin covering this sort of ground for 75 minutes. That's what me is really standing out, the buy-in, the absolute buy-in that Gallagher has got out of this core group of lads is phenomenal. I think it's absolutely phenomenal to get them, because quality lads like them up front, they don't do them hard yards that easily, Michael. They don't track back 70 meters back to go 70 meters forward. I'm a forward. I just want to kick the ball over the bar. Just give me the ball. That kind of way. That's the way. So, whereas in fairness to Rory, he has massive buy-in by these guys. Massive buy-in. I'd say the squad is limited. I'm sure they have their 30-plus players, but I'm sure really if you look down through it, there's 18 to 21 playing every day, and it's the same guys every single day. So, in fairness to them, hugely. I'd be disappointed with Monaghan, Michael. We all go on and say they're very experienced, and they are very experienced, but did they watch the Tyrone game at all? You'd wonder. Derry set up the counter-attack. They're forcing you down channels you don't want to go down. They're forcing you into turning the ball over in the middle eight and breaking a pace and, letting Orr and Lynch carry the ball 50 metres uncontested now. And they weren't even setting a trap. So usually, right, no problem. We all say the same. Let the keeper have the ball, let him travel, and then set a trap, put him under pressure so he'll give it away. But for me, he was kicking it completely under no pressure, uncontested, straight over Boyle's head into Toner's hands and goal. I'm just not sure what Monaghan were doing. And for such an experienced side and such an experienced coaching ticket, they were very disappointing.
Just on that, Monaghan have probably disappointed a couple of times when there was a bit of pressure on, or the favourites, or maybe when they carried that favourites tag, they haven't delivered on it. Just something you said there, Davy, about getting the likes of Shane McGuigan to do the hard yards. I've seen it at club level plenty. When a lad can put the ball over the bar or do the damage on the scoreboard, you might want to do it at the far end. And it's a fair testament to the job Rory Gallagher has done to have gotten those guys to do it. And as well as that, he would have received an awful lot of flack maybe for his style of play with Fermanagh. Can you just talk me through getting those really, elite players, those elite forwards to do the hard yards, but also Gallagher has had to maybe cut his cloth to measure in Fermanagh. He's played a different style with Derry because he has a different style of player and a different quality available to him. A lot of the way you play depends on what you have before you, does it not? So it was probably unfair criticism even at the time, even if it did look, particularly negative.
Yeah, look, you're dealing with 2 completely different projects here for Rory. Fermanagh was what it was. They were very, very limited, and he had to park the bus and he had to play that game with them and leave Sean Quigley up top or whatever he decided to do. Whereas this is a team now with serious talent now. Serious talent. You've Anton Tohill, who can't even feature here.
Yeah.
He's coming back from the AFL here. You're talking Conor Glass, they've lost Kieran McFall and you wouldn't even notice. I can't believe he's gone and there's very little about it. So, the high energy, athleticism, pace and power of this team is frightening. Their transition ability is right up there with the best in the country, right up there. But if you listen to everything, if you listen to all Gallagher's interviews, listen to everything he's saying, these lads have trained more than any team in the country. Conor Glass yesterday, this is 20 months. When Gallagher came in, he demanded A, B, C, and D. Forget the club, lads. Forget the club rivalry. Forget all this, because I think that was causing problems in Derry over the years. Forget all this, lads, and let's buy in and trust each other and back each other. And my understanding of it is that they have trained more regularly, harder, and more often than any other side in this country. And really and truly, you can see it all now. They're fitter, they're more physical, they're stronger, they're a gelled unit, everything you want. And that is testament to them. And you know why it's the biggest testament to them? I can do all that, no problem. And the next man can do all that when you have competition, Michael, right? If you have competition, it's far easier to get your star forward, i.e. Daniel Flynn, to track back and do that. Because otherwise, look, lads, there's another man on the line here who's equally as good, or just, etc. Whereas in Derry, that competition doesn't seem to be there because, as I said, the same core lads are playing week on week, And not on that, Rory's come out publicly and said he wanted this. This is the position he wanted himself in. He wanted the same 11 and 12 core lads starting every single game, every like league game, championship game, and from there on. So to do that is unbelievably impressive. It's unbelievably impressive that you can keep them guys so level-headed that no complacency is setting in. No one's just relaxing or sitting on their laurels to say, well, I'm going to play this week because I'm one of the 11. I know I'm playing. I'm going to play next week. No matter how I play, I'm going to play. He's already publicly said this. You know, it's a phenomenal job, and huge credit must go to them. And I'd say Donegal are very worried, you know.
Just on that, obviously Ulster final next against Derry. This is Rory Gallagher's third Ulster final appearance as a manager. Hasn't won one yet. Was there with Donegal, was there with Fermanagh, and is obviously there with Derry. I think he has 2 as a coach. Just even to go a bit beyond the Ulster final, like, are they realistic All-Ireland contenders here?
I don't think they are All-Ireland contenders just now. Just coming back to my previous point, I think that their depth will cost them. You see Niall Loughlin pulled up with a hamstring yesterday, right? Probably out for the unless they stick him in a cryo machine for 2 weeks or a chamber for 2 weeks now, which they might do. But I'd say he's out for the final. So look, the depth will cost them. And again, the 2 subs late on in the 72nd, 77 minute, like, you know, really and truly, they're only running down the clock at that stage. So how deep is the squad? Any sort of a knock, any sort of a niggle, and I just will be concerned about where their depth is at. Absolutely, they could beat Donegal. I've no doubt about that. They could. They have a right chance in that game. And they could progress further on. I can't see them beating the Dublin. I can't see them beating the Kerry. And do you know what was so disappointing for Monaghan is, why didn't they mirror them? Why did they set up to run through them? Like, if you mirror that Derry side, then you're asking them a completely different question. You're not giving McKinless the freedom in the park. You're not giving Conor Doherty the freedom in the park. Whereas, you know, Monaghan went to run through them and got turned over time and time again and left themselves in 40, 50 metres of space. And sure, they've done that to Tyrone 2 weeks earlier, you know?
Yeah.
Davey, I'm sure you didn't see the full game or anything like that, maybe just relying on the highlights like most people. But Limerick are into a Munster final. I think it's the first time since 2010. Derry in an Ulster final, first time since 2011. Obviously, that competition is much harder. But just the job that Billy Lee is doing with those Limerick footballers and the shape they're in. It was level at half-time against Tipperary. Now, this is a hugely changed Tipperary when you compare them with the Munster title winning side a year and a half ago, I suppose, at this stage. But like, Limerick dominated the second half. And a bit like their hurlers, their footballers just look like they're, seriously athletic. The body shapes are there. You can see this is a team kicking on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Billy has made reference to the condition of the lads, and that a couple of years ago they made a decision, if we really want to contest and compete here, we have to really work on the S&C side of it. And in fairness to Limerick, across the board, they've made a huge investment into their GA, into their structures and into their S&C, and it's really reaping rewards now. Like, Billy is doing a phenomenal job. I've been on record saying this numerous times. He's he's probably one of the top managers in the country, just working off, a string panel, that kind of way. And there's no doubt about it. They're doing it this year without their best player in Danny Neville, or definitely their best forward. Anyway, definitely their best forward in Danny Neville. So it's hugely impressive what they're doing. And like, also, it's a limited squad, regardless of what anyone says about it. It's a limited squad. Clearly, they're hugely bought in. Clearly, they're playing for each other. Clearly, they're playing for the manager. Clearly, they're tactically astute. Because when we would have played them a couple of times in the National League, they're very, very tactically aware. Very, very tactically aware. They're really experienced, smart side, really, really smart. Where they probably lack a bit of pace and they really make up for it, I think, in other areas, And fair play to them. It's excellent to see another team coming through. Brilliant to see them at it, up in Division 2 now. And hugely exciting. Look, I'd say the Killarney thing, I wouldn't be too excited about that now myself, Shane, to be honest with you, if I was them, though.
Yeah, I'd say anyone outside the two counties themselves, probably, the interest levels will be small enough here. Yeah. But as it happens, as the show has been going on here, the draw has been made for the Tailteann Cup, so I might as well bring it up here. This is the inaugural Tailteann Cup. The preliminary round will see Wexford against Offaly, Wicklow against Waterford. First round, the winners of Wexford Offaly against Wicklow Waterford. Then Carlow Tipperary, Laois Westmeath. New York get a bye to the quarterfinals. Then the north section, Longford Fermanagh, Leitrim Antrim, Sligo London, Cavan against Down. What are your thoughts on the way this Tailteann Cup has been? I suppose it's done between a north section and a south section. I mean, that's been a small bit of a letdown for me. I would have liked, for example, Tipperary are in this draw here to come up against a team that Tip would very rarely come up against. I know Carlow are in a different province, but you take the general point that a lot of teams who are familiar with each other For example, they're one jumping off the page. Maybe Cavan and Down, they know each other very well. But what are your thoughts on it? I mean, just the draw overall, is there anything that's kind of getting your juices flowing?
Yeah, the couple of things with the North and South, I don't know where this came from, Shane, to be honest with you. I hadn't heard anything mapped, and I was one of the people when I was with club manager pushing for the Tailteann Cup. I did think it was a good idea at the time, provided it would be marketed, provided there was a holiday for the lads, provided there was All-Stars, provided they were going to make a proper go of it. And let's be honest, hasn't got huge coverage on any media I'm looking at anyway, so I can't see it being a huge success. But if you look down through that there, right, you look at that, it's Wicklow v Waterford, it's Wexford v, I'm not sure who's that, Wexford v Offaly, right? It's Carlow, Tip, Leeds. Like, they are all, in my opinion, 50-50 games, give or take, right? So absent Cavan and Down has the potential, if Down were in better shape, has the potential to be a brilliant game. Longford, Fermanagh, Leitrim, like, these are playing at their level. This is these teams' level. And whether people like to hear this or not, this is where they're at. And these games are all going to be crackers, provided they're given the respect and the players hang around and the management's give it the effort it's required, etc., etc. But these all have to. So there definitely is something in this competition for us, lads. There's definitely, the way forward here. I think more thoughts needed. I think maybe more of a push on the media front is needed. And it might be too late for this year. I'm not sure. But there's definitely the nuts and bolts of something in this competition. Definitely is. There. Go on.
Yeah, well, I often hear that the GA need to do more to market it, but what do people like? There's a Tailteann Cup draw today, launch today, and there's going to be players up for interview. So every media company in Ireland will have an opportunity to interview these players. I mean, it's not like they've unlimited resources like when the government had COVID-19 ads going every hour of the day, well, all day, every day, basically on every outlet. Would you rather the GA put the money into grassroots and facilities and all that, or into advertising the competition? Now, maybe you'd get the return, I'm not sure. But media companies probably won't have the resources to cover all of these games in the way that people would like. Number one, we've already talked about a couple of these, like even the Munster football final. Would you plough huge resources into that as a media company in terms of covering it, when you know that most people won't really care about it? And it goes for the same for a lot of these Tailteann Cup games. And, even just to take this on a little bit more, there's been one provincial semi-final, and I won't name which one it was, that a few media companies asked me, are you going to this game? We're struggling to get this covered. And that's for a provincial senior semi-final game. So then I thought, what's the Tailteann Cup going to be like when you've got hurling flying, top-level Sam Maguire flying? It's going to be very hard, Michael.
Yeah, 100%, Shane.
Who do you blame? Like, media companies, in what other walk of life would you give out to a company for not covering something which won't make them money, really?
Yeah, to me, Shane, I am a big fan of the split season, I have to say, but there's just not enough time for games to breed here. And the Tailteann Cup is going to be, I think the Tailteann Cup kicks off, is it the weekend or the day of the Champions League final? Like, there's only one show in town that weekend. There's no point in saying any different. So I do like the split season. I just think we need probably the guts of about 3 weeks just to let things breed a small bit. Give the Tailteann Cup, have it potentially a couple of Tailteann Cup weekends even in it. And I think the same should probably be done with the Joe McDonagh as well, just to give more eyes on it. If there's less on and less to cover, like, these things all of a sudden become bigger because, we're going to have to cover something. We're going to have to talk about something on this show every Monday and Thursday, Shane. So if there's less on and these games are given more time to breed, we're going to be talking about them a bit more. So I think that's a lot of it. It's very condensed at the moment. Now, I totally wash my hands with a lot of people in the national media who are clamoring for things to go back to September again and saying that, the club season means nothing, which is just absolutely ridiculous. And it doesn't even, those opinions don't even warrant comment, really. But just a couple of more weeks for it to breed, I think, would help an awful lot with just those Tailteann Cup games. And they should be played potentially as double headers where possible as well, be it with other Tailteann Cup games at neutral grounds, or be it with some other game in any code that's going on, just to make sure that there's more to it, that it's given more of a billing. But I understand where you're coming from. You just can't cover everything. Like, the Sunday game have so many cameras out with so many different games. You cannot cover every game. That's just the nature of it. But I do hope that the the results even and the commentary around it, that the competition is given the respect it deserves, because this is the first year, and you see with a lot of things, if it doesn't get off the ground in the first year, it could be difficult, and it could be not dead in the water, but you could be fighting a losing battle thereafter.
Just one point on that, like I'm not comparing it to a provincial semi-final or provincial final, and even this Limerick Kerry game. I know there's going to be, you know, very little happening that day with everything else that's happening in the world of sport. But this is a brand new competition we're trying to market and promote here. So it's a little bit different than trying to promote a dead duck of a provincial final. This is, you have the lads in the country. You've 16 teams in the country playing in this competition, and there's a genuine, supposedly All-Ireland up for grabs here. Like, so it should be hugely marketed, and GAA have plenty of money to initially get this off the ground if they really want to, and incentivize the players to hang around by All-Stars and by trips or whatever else it might be. But why isn't the final being played on All-Ireland final, lads? Why isn't the final being played before the football? Like, they're all marketing that costs you nothing. That costs you nothing. Like, there's now the incentive to get my son or me or my dog or whatever into Croke Park and All-Ireland final day. You know, so that's, you know, now all of a sudden Westmeath, Wicklow, whoever else, Cavan, Down are all looking forward to, geez, we've a crack here at the All-Ireland now. So, you know, that's my take on it, you know.
Just on that as well, there's a hoopla around that game then. There's only, like, when you're building up to an All-Ireland final, you're only focusing on that one game, and there's only a certain amount of ways you can analyse it. If there's another game, like the minor game, with due respect, I loved when the minor was under 18, and I thought, I just think it's, like, there's 15-year-olds playing on All-Ireland final day now. I just don't know if it necessarily deserves that billing now. I would give it to the Tailteann Cup, and then all, you know, it's only natural that it's going to get more column mentions. It has to, because there's 2 games on in town that weekend in the GAA really that matter, and the Tailteann Cup will be one of them. If it receives 15 to 20% of the publicity that weekend, then it's a hell of a lot more than it's going to receive any other weekend of the year.
Yeah, especially, and like if you get to the final of the Tailteann Cup, it's going to be 2 good quality teams playing. Fine, it mightn't be the quality of Dublin Mayo or Dublin Kerry, but you've had many really entertaining games over the years by sort of mid-tier sides. To talk about another All-Ireland final that happened at the weekend, Davy, Kildare obviously came up a little bit short against Tyrone and finished 120 to 114 for a finish. Rory Canavan looks a serious player. So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree there. But I suppose disappointing enough for Kildare, but again, signs that there's quality in the county to get to this position again a few years after you led them to glory. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, look, Tyrone were the better side. It was the first proper test Kildare got all year. I'm not sure Leinster was very strong this year, and they came through that relatively okay. And then into Sligo, and look, I think we can all, it was fairly easy. I was watching it here one evening myself that Mayo should have beaten Sligo, and I think the keeper had a howler the last 5 minutes and ultimately cost them the game. So Kildare probably came through this a little bit untested and into a final. Look, they just met a far superior team, just with the forward unit of, you know, and you have McLean and you have Canavan, you have Cush, you know, O'Donoghue all in one, and young Devlin wing back. They were just a far superior team. And I don't think there was anything Brian or anybody in Clare could have done to change the result, and the lads put their best foot forward. And But it's hugely positive. A lot of them guys are underage again next year, lads. So that's hugely positive for the county. In my opinion, under 20 football, yes, win things is brilliant, whatever you can do. But we need 5 seniors out of that team, in my opinion. That's the way I look at this thing, is get 5 through out of that. We have a strong minor team coming. Get 5 or 6 out of that, you know, and now all of a sudden in 3 years' time, you have 10 more seniors, you know, and I think that's what underage is about, and that's for my idea where it should be going, you know.
But do you think, like, when you're a manager of an under-20 team, like, let's say you were 4 or 5 years ago, are you thinking of that sort of wider aspect view of it? Are you thinking, I need to win this year when you're in that spot? Because if you don't, or if you don't get some results, all of a sudden people are looking to boot you out the door.
Yeah, to an extent, yeah. I don't think the pressure is that much in underage football, to be honest with you. In my experience, it's not half as much as even senior club. Maybe if you're with a top club or you're with a top county, whatever it might be, be far more results driven, I would have thought. But honestly, you know, don't get me wrong. When you're there, you want to win. Obviously, you want to win. But I'm very, very proud that we've 7 lads starting for the Kildare seniors today, or at least 5 starting every day and 2 coming on every day. You know, and we would have 1 more if Mark Dempsey was around. So that's something I'll take with me forever. Winning things is brilliant, and it's very important. Great, no problem to get an underage culture of winning. But honestly, I think counties need to get a reality here of what are we trying to do? We're trying to build a senior team for the future here, in my opinion. And as when I'm not no hypocrite, absolutely go out and win your games and win your underage games. But with the thing in your head that I need to get A, B, C, and D through here, you know? Yeah.
Well, look, Davy Burke, brilliant to have you on the show today, and hopefully we'll be chatting to you again soon. Great thoughts.
Thanks, lads.
Cheers, Davy. Good man.
Brilliant to have Davy on there.
I wonder how much football. I was going to ask him. I wonder how much football did he watch over the weekend?
I think
He
that
must have
man
watched
needs
10 to
sleep,
12
drink
hours.
football.
Yeah, I'd say 10 to 12 hours of football games over the weekend minimum. I'd say.
Yeah, we've a bit more hurling to talk. Sean Collier says, lads, will you stick or twist? You told us all year Ballygunner's win was going to practically be instrumental in Waterford's success this year. Now you're implying it's detrimental. I mean, but you have to kind of roll with the punches. If you look at the information and now it's telling you that, well, we haven't really seen Peter Hogan in the team that much. Obviously he's come on. We haven't seen Ian Kenny at all. Pádraig Mahoney hasn't. I'm not entirely sure why he wasn't in the 26. He hasn't had that much game time. And Deise Hutchinson has shown some flashes of absolute brilliance, but maybe hasn't been quite as scintillating as we thought he'd be. I mean, you just have to look at it and think, well, maybe that's partly down to a really, really long club season. Like sometimes it took the Ballygunner lads a bit of time to get going with the county team. Maybe Portumna's success sometimes impacted on Galway. So you could look at it a couple of ways. Yeah,
well, I think we posed the question and made the argument of how good of an effect it might have. Does it look like it's had a really good effect? The league win aside, not in championship. So I think you have to bring up the flip point on it as well. And probably just there hasn't been as many Ballygunner lads featuring as we would have expected. That's just it's probably been surprising. I would have expected 2 to 3 starters and potentially 2 to 3 coming in off the bench, and a lot of those players haven't been even on the bench, which has been very surprising.
And do you remember just at the start of the league, well, when they first came back in after winning the All-Ireland Club, Liam Cahill was talking about it'll take them a lot of work to get back up to inter-county level. So as far as he's viewing it, maybe this is to do with GPSs and all of that sort of athletic measurement, that there's a fair drop-off, and playing with the club is all brilliant and you'll be sharp and your hurling will be great and all that, but maybe you're kind of losing athletically week on week.
Yeah, no, potentially, yeah. Like he did say that they were coming in without a pre-season, without an inter-county pre-season, which he basically thought was an awful lot different to, playing a club season or a club pre-season or anything like that. But it's just mad how things have turned for Waterford. As you say, probably missed a bit of an opportunity against Limerick that day, playing against a weakened Limerick team. And I just couldn't believe how the wheels came off, really, yesterday. I'm just really, really surprised by the lack of energy, the lack of intent. Yeah, Cork brought a lot to the table, but Waterford brought very little to the table, and that's just hugely surprising. And as I said earlier, their season is in, someone else's hands now, having been number two, and the one that we thought were going to potentially take down Limerick or had the best opportunity to, now they mightn't even get the chance to take them out.
Yeah, John Collins says it's ironic, but Walsh Park doesn't seem to suit Waterford. And, I've said about Dublin, Parnell Park, it feels like it doesn't suit them anymore. Richard Hogan says Tyke Foley was another who I thought might have been brought in. They didn't lose yesterday due to athleticism. It was passion and pride, says Richard Hogan. I'd love to hear from Waterford people. Do they think it's the same? A reminder, we're brought to you by OurGaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you'll get 15% off. Maybe this little Galway jersey. Maybe you've got a club that's got a maroon jersey and you fancy getting something like this to sort of represent. Maybe that Derry one there. There's a load of them here on screen. There's a full gamut of jerseys at OurGaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you'll get 15% off. Great supporter of the show here. We have to talk Laurie Ring and Maher Cup at this stage. Actually, just before we do, you had a note made here. Where do Wexford go from here? Having drawn with Westmeath, this is a game that they should be winning. I suppose just in terms of talent, what's at their disposal, it's a tough one to take for Darragh Egan. The pressure will be on, especially as an outside boss. The pressure will be on.
Big pressure coming into that Kilkenny game. They're going to Nolan Park. I think the last time they played there in the round robin, they were beaten by a point. Their backs are to the walls a bit now. They just weren't professional with how they went about things the other day. Just a lot of really sloppy mistakes, things that you just don't expect from a county that, been playing Division 1 hurling. Just a lot of kind of elementary mistakes, weren't clinical on the scoreboard at all. And as we talked about those 2 really sloppy goals, they're under the pump now. Again, it's like Dublin. You're wondering, is there going to be a reaction? And coming into that last round, you're hoping for a reaction from Dublin. You're hoping for a reaction from Waterford. You're hoping for a reaction from Wexford. And that's what makes the final weekend really intriguing. But it's really, really backs to the wall for Wexford. And whatever about the ring rack and Mard, where we talk about in a minute, we'll start with the McDonagh Cup anyway, because Offaly's win on Saturday over Kerry, I didn't get to see it yet. I know you saw an awful lot of it. By all accounts, anybody that was down at this game was an absolute cracker. Finished Offaly 4-23 to Kerry 2-28. Like, it's just ridiculous scoring. 27 scores for Offaly, totaling 35 points. 30 scores for Kerry, totaling 34 points. Just end-to-end stuff. Just one thing that I will say is, like, it's unusual, you'd say, for a manager to move someone from defence to attack mid-season. But Killian Sampson moving from wing back, and he was wing back on the UL team that won the Fitzgibbon, moving into the forward line. Like, he scored 1-5 the last day, got 2 crucial goals the other day. Like, that's just been huge. And David Nally, who I'm sure you'll chat a bit more about. David Nally, over the last 4 to 5 years, has been one of the best club players in Offaly with Belmont. A small, kind of diminutive player. Probably struggled throughout the league at different stages. Wouldn't be the most physical player. Probably caught a small enough player, caught on the heavy ground. But they've persevered with him, and he has come up trumps. He got 1-3 the other day, including, I think you said there, the last 3 points. And he's just a beautiful, crisp, clean ball striker. And, you know, he was brilliant at the end of the game. Him and Killian Sampson probably the two trumps for us the other day. And just in what is a huge result. If you'd looked at the Division 1 relegation game, you would have thought, and I did think, that Offaly would potentially struggle to get to a McDonagh Cup final. And now they're in pole position to do so going into that last round. Just a huge result.
To me, it feels like Offaly, despite, you know, the league not going the way they would have wanted, that they're building something here. And, you know, I've asked you a good few times, what sort of hurling are they playing under Michael Verney? They are trying to play that modern stuff. So too are Kerry, actually. There's a nice blend to both teams in terms of the short ball and long ball. And early on in the game, there was like that first goal for Killian Sampson. I couldn't quite tell who gave him the hand pass to feed him in. It could have been John Murphy. It could have been David Nally. I just could, and I paused it and all and went back. I couldn't figure out which guy it was. But there was a lovely ball in. Attacker catches the ball, turns inside and feeds the man who was Killian Sampson coming off the shoulder, buries it low to the net. I mean, how often do we talk about forwards trying to put the ball into the top corner and it gets saved because to give the goalie an opportunity to save it? His second goal, when a Paddy Clancy shot had come down off the post in the second half, buried it low to the net. David Nally's finish low to the net. And I actually thought, this isn't just by accident. Now, John Murphy put his into the roof of the net, but it was lovely team play. Jason Sampson is the midfielder. Yeah. He'd won a turnover at midfield, soloed the ball through, waited for the right moment, lovely sympathetic hand pass and straight into the top corner. I was really impressed with how Offaly worked the ball out from the back. So they did go long at times. Obviously, you can't not go long at times. But they kept hitting the ball out to Jack Screeney, who I was asking you yesterday after watching the game, does he not play like further up the field for the under-20s? Is he not a forward or whatever? And you said that he even takes frees at times. He's the under-20 captain, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like really good player, worked the ball. Like, he played sweeper wearing number 2. And he was working the ball out from the back. And all the Offaly players were comfortable doing stick passes out from the back. At times it broke down. Like, fine, that's just going to happen. But I was just impressed with the brand of hurling and the clinical nature of the finishing. The other side then, Kerry. Like, Mikey Boyle, what a man he is to win a puck out. Sorry, Pádraig Boyle. Mikey Boyle was centre-back. Pádraig Boyle won, I think, 5 puckouts in the first half, 4 of which led to scores. And Shane Conway was very, very quiet in the first half. You'd have to put that down to Offaly as well, limiting him. They didn't take their goal chance in the first half. But then the second half, Shane Conway started to catch fire, as did Jordan Conway, who come on at half-time and hit 3 points, 2 of them within 2 minutes of coming on, and that gave them a real injection. And I thought all of a sudden, geez, Kerry are going to take over the game here. They're 21 points to 13 ahead after 43 minutes. They'd completely taken over the start of the second half. But then Offaly hit 2-6 in a row. And then you thought, 10 points clear, game over. And then Kerry came back. And, like, to be fair to David Nally, that point at the end was brilliant stuff. It was a great win. And you would feel a little bit sorry for Kerry. But like Offaly, there's something brewing there too. Stephen Malumphey's having a good year. I know it feels like it probably doesn't matter, but they did beat Tip in the Munster Hurling League. That feels like it counts for something when you look at the rest of their year. Their under-20s pushed Tipperary for long spells in the Munster Championship, and obviously Tip came close to winning the province. So this is two teams that I thought moving in the right direction, and it's no surprise they served up a very good game.
I think, Shane, what you said, they're trying to play, there's not necessarily a right or wrong way, but hurling has changed and you just can't lump it now. You have to try and be clever with possession. It's so hard won, and they're both trying to hold on to the ball. They're both trying to be, I'd say, really proactive in the way that they play. And if you want to beat the best, you're going to have to get up to the levels that they're playing at. So it's hugely encouraging to see that. And it's fascinating coming into that last weekend as well. We host Carlow next Saturday. Carlow had a win at the weekend again against Down, 225 to 119. Like, they've been a bit up and down, but they've managed to put themselves in a good position. We play Carlow in Tullamore at 1 o'clock on Saturday. If Carlow win and Antrim beat Kerry, Carlow are through to the final on head-to-head against us because we both finish on 6. Now, if Carlow beat us and Kerry beat Antrim, it comes down to score difference, which we're probably not in great shape. We'll all be on 6. We're not in great shape because we didn't beat Meath by nearly as much as what everybody else did. But that's going to be, it's all to play for coming into the final weekend. So it's really worked out really well. Antrim had a big win over Meath yesterday. Like, huge score, 7-29 to Meath, 3-13. Conor McCann and Sean Elliott scoring 2 goals each. And Paddy Burke also got a goal as well. And that's just like, it's primed for, a perfect final weekend. And just to be interesting from an Antrim point of view, similar to Clare playing Waterford and Munster, Antrim are already through to the final. They're surely going to run the bench a small bit. So that could potentially have an effect on, giving Kerry a better chance to win this game. So it's going to be hugely interesting. And again, we'll be over and back listening to radios here and trying to get coverage here and there and find out what the score is here. But just from an Offaly point of view, we just hope that we just do what we have to do on Saturday, get a result, get a win, and we'll be through to the final, which to me would be like, getting to the final would have been success for me for this year, just based on a tough league and probably not having the same panel to pick from at the moment that we would like.
Yeah, and as Richard Hogan points here about the progress with Kerry, Kilmoyle getting to the intermediate All-Ireland, that was big. Verney, are you going to the minor game tonight? Laois versus Offaly in a first ever Leinster minor final. Will you be able to get there?
I had car trouble yesterday, so I'm hoping my slow puncture. I'll bang a bit of air into it this evening and try and get down to Portlaoise. I was there at the Leinster final, the 2021 that was played delayed in 2021. We were beaten by Kilkenny, but this is the makings of a belter of a game. We beat them by 3 when we played them earlier on in the year. And it's great to go to a game where it's against one of your neighbouring teams. As I said, never have played a Leinster final before. You think you have a really realistic chance of winning, and Laois will think the exact same. So yeah, no, I can't wait for that. All going well, and car health permitting, I'll be there.
Yeah, and the other thing about Offaly is they were beaten, I felt, decisively enough in the relegation playoff against Antrim. But it took a last-second goal, and Offaly had a chance to go up the other end. I think Owen Cahill had a free from about 30 yards out. It was tipped over the bar, so they ended up losing by a point. Like, they've been pushing Antrim progressively closer. So assuming they do get there, that could be Offaly getting successive promotions back up to the top tier. That would be some job by Michael Fennelly, wouldn't it?
It would, yeah. This mightn't be too popular. Funnily enough, I'm not sure if promotion right now is exactly what we need. I know that might sound a bit silly, but I think if we were in the McDonagh again next year and built and had a right good Division 2 campaign coming into the Championship next year, that would be better and we'd be more ready to compete at senior level. But that's not the way it works. Like, you win the competition that's there to win on a given day. So like, they'll be going absolutely gung-ho for it. But if I'm thinking long term, I'm thinking we've a really good minor team now. We've a good, decent under-20 team. If we were getting back up to the top tier in 2 years, it would be better than next year. But that's not the way it works. You win whatever competition is in front of you on a given day, and that's not the way the lads will be thinking. But when you're thinking about a project and when would it be best for them, when can they realistically compete at that top level, I think 2 years' time would be better than next year. But if they can win the McDonagh, they'll be going hard to win it, and they're in with a shout at the moment.
And even if they get to the final, they have a preliminary All-Ireland quarter-final, so they'll be playing a Liam McCarthy Cup team that has been playing quite well or done enough results to get through. So they're going to be up against it, assuming they get to that final, whichever teams get through there. So
yeah, just quickly, I might as well throw it out now. It's going to wait till next weekend, but if Offaly do get to the Joe McDonagh Cup final and Tipperary don't get through, Offaly are further in the championship than Tipperary. I might as well throw it out now. There's no point in being the big man next Monday morning when we know the results. And maybe Offaly won't qualify and I won't get the chance to say it. So I'm going to say it now. So hopefully the boys will do the business.
But knowing your luck watching Offaly hurling the last 20 years, somehow Tip will sneak through and you'll be shocking. Christy Ring Cup, Mayo beat Derry 223 to 218. London had a good win over Wicklow, 129 to 216. Nice bit to spare. And Kildare's good form, 223 to 214 over Sligo, never massively in doubt there.
Just a quick one on that, Shane. Mayo went gung-ho for this game in McHale Park, and they've gotten the fruits of their labour on and off the pitch. To me, that this is a surprise. Mayo were Rackard Cup winners last year. Derry were Ring Cup finalists last year, albeit beaten well by Offaly. And I think this whole thing with McHale Park has probably galvanised the Mayo lads even further, and that's a big win for them. And even London beating Wicklow. Wicklow have fallen very sharply in the last couple of years. That's a huge win for London.
You hung up the hurley.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to comment on that, but London, for London there, who haven't played championship in the last couple of years, to come in and there's a potential for Wicklow to be relegated now. That's just a disaster for Wicklow. And just from a Kildare point of view, continuing to do what they've done the whole way throughout the campaign with a comprehensive victory over Sligo, they'll be heavy favourites going into that game against Mayo. If you look at it, like last year, Mayo were playing Rackard Cup and Kildare were playing McDonagh Cup, so they should still be a step ahead of them. But that's going to be an intriguing final too.
Yeah, so Roscommon 325, Fermanagh 215, Tyrone 123, Donegal 119, and Armagh and Warwickshire putting up a huge score between them, 10 goals. Armagh 527, Warwickshire 516. Then the Laurie Maher Cup round 5, Longford beat Cavan by 27 points to 214. Monaghan just squeaked a 1-point win over Lancashire 17-16, and Louth beat Leitrim by 2 points, 218 to 216. And the Munster Senior Camogie final, Cork beat Clare after extra time, 24 points to 118. A bit of a cracker there. Amy O'Connor firing 10 points in that game, 5 of them from open play. So, geez, there was a huge amount of GA going on at the weekend there.
Yeah. I think it's set up in the Laurie Maher. It's set up for a Longford Leitrim final now after the results last weekend. And Donegal been beaten by Tyrone has put them under a bit of pressure coming into that last round of the Nicky Rackard. So, it's all to play. Or sorry, that was the last round. I'm actually not 100% sure on who the two finalists are for the Rackard. Just based on those results there, I'll have to find out here before we go, just to make sure that everyone knows. Do you know offhand who the two finalists are going to be actually after the weekend?
I actually don't just yet. This is the joys of doing a show live. When someone puts you on the spot like that, you can end up under awful pressure. Just while you're checking that there, hopefully nobody will get sour with us about that. I'm just wondering in terms of goats of the week. And again, look, I caught you on the hop last week in terms of this. Who would be your goat of the week in hurling? I think it's hard to look beyond, I suppose, Tony Kelly in hurling.
TK Lemonade, yeah. You'd have to give it to him. It's gas after 44 minutes that he had the 16 points scored. I thought potentially we could have been looking at the biggest tally in championship history. I thought we could have been hitting 20 or 21 points, whatever about hitting 116. Imagine he'd scored 20 or 21 points. But it was an unbelievable display. He would definitely be my hurling goat of the week anyway. Just a quick one.
Denny hurling in football for me. The Derry man, 2 goals.
Yeah, the Oak Leafers. Just a quick one on the Nicky Rackard Cup. So that Tyrone win over Donegal has massive ramifications. That was a glorified semi-final. So Tyrone are playing Roscommon in the final now. Massive, massive setback for Donegal. That's the second year in a row that Tyrone have beaten them in key games in the Rackard there. So it's Tyrone against Roscommon next week. And in the Laurie Maher Cup, it's, as I said, it's Longford versus Leitrim in that final. Just loads of more games coming up. I think is that finals weekend next weekend?
Stop asking me questions that I haven't looked up the answer to. The amount of research we do for these shows, and then you just all of a sudden you get caught up by one or two things. We've touched on God knows how many, 40 games, maybe 30 games in this. Now and again, something will slip through the cracks, but it's obviously no disrespect to any of the teams involved. By the way, Thursday's show is going to be a cracker. We're going to have Kieran Carey and Richie Power in as usual. What a rapport those two men are building up over the 5 weeks that we've had them so far. So we're looking forward to more of that. Huge weekend coming. Patreon.com/OurGame is the only place to see that. Michael, any final words, or have we it all said?
No, I'm not gonna hang you out to dry here and ask you some question that you don't know the answer to. But no, another absolutely heart-stopping weekend. That game in Ennis yesterday was as good a game as I've seen live in a long time. And next weekend, more the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, we'll see you on Thursday.
Cheers, Shane.